Chapter 41. Chapter 40. My ravens had informed me that they had found a Dothraki tribe in the vale between the windy foothills of the east and the vast fertile fields of the north around 10 miles away from our location. For the what they describe it, and I could gather it was a small Dothraki tribe setting camp, of perhaps 800 or 900 souls, including the non-combatants, and for what I read and had found out thanks to my newly acquired Dothraki men, small tribes don't usually last long, especially if they don't increase their numbers in battle. Usually, because small tribes form after a big Khalasar breaks up after the death of their Khal, they are left vulnerable to bigger Khalasars. And apparently that was what happened to the tribe I absorbed. Their Khal died, and they broke up into 5 small tribes. He told me before that happened around 4 months ago. He also told me his tribe was originally composed of around 6,000 riders. For all I knew, this new small tribe my ravens had found was probably at one point part of the same Khalasar, because like my Dothraki said, it's not common for a small tribe to survive long. They usually expand or get absorbed. What are our orders? The new appointed KO of my Dothraki riders asked. Prepare for battle. We are taking those bastards with us, I chuckled, as I prepared for the imminent battle ahead. If I could call such thing a battle, they were pretty small, this wouldn't take much time. And while Daenerys would be happy for me to stay behind, I couldn't. As per Dothraki culture, I had to ride with my men to battle. A Khal must always lead the charge or at least be involved in the battle in any given way, the endpoint being that I had to be there, to show my people I was ready to die in battle and worthy of being followed. But, like I had expected, the fight was a massacre, many would say. I entered the fight cutting heads like I was cutting the grass. It was pretty one-sided. For one, they didn't expect us, and we completely overwhelmed them in numbers. Even my ravens killed some riders by gouging their eyes out while shouting, "Blood for the Khorn." Frankly, it consumed more time to get to them than to defeat them and absorb them. The battle lasted roughly around 20 minutes, before I completely subdued them. Like my last battle, they joined after I killed their Khal and his blood riders. This time their assimilation was surprisingly easier. They saw that I had some Dothraki following me, and even with their limited information about me, they formulated the right answer, that I was a newly appointed Khal, a foreigner but a Khal nonetheless. And while this time I didn't have to make their horses kneel to show them my power and make them believe I was their chosen one, I still did it nonetheless, just to be sure. After all, I had to ensure and ignite their fanatical and blindness loyalty. If they thought I was the stallion that would mount the world, they would probably follow me to the hell and back. So far absorbing Dothraki into my ranks has been relatively easy. Of course, I had yet to find a big tribe, which I'm pretty sure will put up quite the challenge. Tribes like Drogo's Khalasar that had over 40,000 riders, for example, they would crush me on a straight fight. But unless I was forced, Drogo and his Khalasar would be the last on my Dothraki shopping list. Time to go back, I sighed, seeing my men finishing taking all the resources this small tribe had collected. That, of course, everything they had was mine now. After the battle, I went straight back to my temporary camp, where I found Daenerys waiting for me back exactly where I left her, with the same worried expression on her face she had when I left. I couldn't really blame her, to be honest. Since the day I entered into that pseudo-coma, she has been overprotective of me. Even though I had told her multiple times everything was fine, she would not believe me and let it down. I suppose it was somewhat scarring waking up to my bleeding body that night. Her overprotectiveness went so far that today she had refused to let me go and fight, saying I was still recovering. But after a while and a long talk where I assured her I would be fine, and that this battle was nothing but a day in the playground for men, she relented. You shouldn't have gone into battle after what happened. Someone tried to kill you. Daenerys sighed in relief, seeing me back in one piece, checking every inch of my body for injuries. She believed someone had entered our chambers that fateful night and tried to kill me, and that the assassin was still within our ranks, so she trusted no one but me, and frankly I wasn't going to correct her assumption. It's not like I could just explain to her that a metaphysical being with untold power wants to fuck with me so bad that he decided to choose a champion that will try to fuck with me on his behalf with a never-ending and ever-growing army of corpses. That was something I would explain her later, not the evil god part, but the long night part of it. But for now, I would keep her in the dark. I'm fine, I chuckled. I told you many times, I won't die on you. That much was true. If I won all this I would probably outlive her, with the super body and all. I still worry. Daenerys pouted adorably. What am I to do if something were to happen to you? Nothing will happen to me, not by man's hands anyway, I sighed. While the war was like a loot box and anything could happen, I was sure of something with all my being. My biggest threat wasn't here or in Westeros, it was beyond the wall, lurking in the shadows, growing stronger every second it passes. Daenerys eyed curiously before she sighed, giving me a long and passionate kiss. I love you, my reckless bear. I love you, my sweet dragon, I chuckled, realizing a second later what I had just said. Daenerys' eyes widened in surprise, that surprise slowly turning to happiness. HRMMM, the words every mate wants to hear, he said. YRSSS, some booty tonight he will get. Asterisk, dance around her? Show her how big your wings are. Asterisk, another raven added as she showed me how to do it. I didn't know how to react. These ravens were getting more and more strange every day, and frankly, I find that both awesome and adorable. You said it. Daenerys kissed in a quite possessive manner as if claiming me as her own. Wow, you had a lot going on with that kiss, I chuckled. It's because I finally know you are mine, Daenerys giggled, kissing me one more time. Your heart and body belongs to me, my bear, like my body and heart, belong to you. Oh, what a terrible destiny awaits for me, I chuckled, kissing her back while giving her a playful spank on her ass. After a passionate night with my wife, I took a moment to rearrange my plans. Conquering the Dothraki at this pace would take me a year, and the sooner I had them under my wing the better. So I would have to risk a bit to win a lot. Betting usually works that way, the more you bet the more you can possibly get. While I knew I wasn't ready to face Drogo and his absurdly big Khalasar, it was more than obvious that I had to start targeting bigger prey. There were a few Khalasars with over 10,000 riders. If I collected a few, my mission would become considerably easier, and while the numbers wouldn't be in my favor, I still had a chance. All I had to do was win one battle against a big Khalasar and everything would go just fine. So with that in mind, I ordered my ravens to fly around Essos and locate as many Khalasars as they could with at least over 3,000 riders. *HRMMM doubts and fear within you I feel, YRSSS. Halting your path the dark side of the corn is Rhoda said as he flew into my tent. Well, surprisingly you are right, I chuckled, petting the raven who ruffled his feathers in approval and delight, but don't worry buddy, I will overcome this. HRMMM and by you stand we will, YRSSS Rhoda added puffing his feathery chest with pride and wisdom. I know haha, I chuckled. The next morning I woke up to a gang of ravens jumping on the bed around me and my wife, they were chanting something. We found some big Khalasars. We deserve some petting? Don't forget corn. We deserve corn. Chapter 42. Chapter 41. My ravens came back in morning happy and static with their discoveries. They had found all the prominent Dothraki tribes scattered around Essos, the smallest of them having over 10,000 riders. It was time to go big. If I continued at this pace Essos would be mine in a decade. I had to speed things up, risking more to win more. While it's true I only had over 6,000 men, that didn't count my animals, I had over 3,000 horses that unlike the Dothraki ones would fight, and my ravens, so in the end, the battle was more than fair if I took that into account. I will leave in about 2 hours, I told Daenerys as I put on my clothes. Let me guess, the ravens found something? Daenerys eyed me for a second. You can communicate with them, right? I sighed, she was right, and honestly, I'm surprised that nobody hasn't figured it out. Not only ravens, any animal, they can talk to me, and I can talk to them. I can see why you didn't tell me before, Daenerys said deep in thought. If I had to take a guess, I would say they are your information network, so if people were to know about this, you would be left in the unknown, am I correct? I eyed her for a second before I started to chuckle. Yes, that is very much why I have been avoiding people knowing about it. Her deduction was on point. Maybe I should start calling her Sherlock. Your secret is safe with me, my bear, Daenerys smiled, not at all offended I didn't tell her this earlier. Any other secrets you might want to share? Well, I can use any weapon in the world, and have a super body. I laughed. I knew she would take this as a joke, but sadly for her, it was the truth. So in the future when this inevitably came up, I would use this moment as a reminder that I told her. Well, I already know my bear is the best warrior, and he does indeed have a great body, so those are not secrets, Daenerys laughed, kissing me on the lips softly. Be safe out there, I need you. I will. I nodded as I left the room. It was time to conquer. I left once again Daenerys with 500 men and some ravens to protect her. I also ordered her horse to basically be her bodyguard. It would take me 2 days to get to the Dothraki tribe I was targeting, but after winning against them, I would finally have the strength to fight the rest. I just had to win this battle, and everything would fall into place. All I had to do was exactly the same I had done so far. Win. After 2 long days of travel and 1 to recover, I was mere miles away from the battle, and like me, the Dothraki knew I was approaching and were already riding towards me. This didn't come as a surprise for my ravens had told me in advance, but it hardly mattered. It was time to fight, so shouting a battle cry, I rode into battle with my men following close behind, and my ravens flying above me. For the corn. My ravens shouted in a powerful caw, as they charged into battle from the blue skies. For the police. The horses shouted in a mighty battle cry as they galloped to destroy my enemies. As we approached their troops I ordered my ravens to attack the Dothraki first, taking in consideration their flying advantage. It would undoubtedly disorient them. With their orders my ravens took the mission to their heats, and soon I saw the feathered warriors made their way towards the fierce nomads with a battle caw, trying to push them off their horses. The riders tried to slash them away, trying to kill my ravens, failing for the most part, as it was hard to cut something so small. While moving, taking their struggle to fend off my feathery friends as an opportunity, I commanded my cavalry to attack the Dothraki with all our might, with loyal horses trampling as many Dothraki as they could with their strong and powerful hooves. Some of my Dothraki riders were shouting in happiness, saying that I had blessed them with the honor to fight with their horses like this, fighting like brothers they said. After that the battle continued for an hour or with me every now and then commanding my archers to shoot down their men. I would see many riders and horses fall wounded or dead to the ground to the arrows they were receiving. I was during this trying to find the Khal, but in the end, it was the Khal that found me. He rode towards with a happy expression. I saw him covered in the blood of my comrades galloping proudly on his horse, with his curved sword in his right hand, and the head of one of my men of his left. I am Khal Moro, I will take what is yours and make it mine, Khal Moro said with a smug expression, throwing me the head of my KO. I am Khal, and unlike you, I will take what's rightfully mine, because all of you belong to me, I said with a faint smile as I added a taunt, come little filly, I will end you. The Khal growled in response as he jumped off his horse, swinging his curved sword against my head, but I moved aside just enough so that the sword just passes me by. Try again, I chuckled, making him glow red anger. With a smile in my face, I continued to dodge his attacks with little to no effort, and this was obviously getting to his nerves as he was growing angrier and angrier as he continued to miss his swings at me. You won't win, little filly, because you are already dead. With that quote said that always wanted to use, I leaped forward as I vertically spun my blade around, releasing a flowing attack in a circular motion with enough strength and momentum to separate the Khal from his lower half. I stood behind the noted Khal, as I shouted, join my Khal or die. It didn't take long for the remaining Dothraki to lower their weapons. I am Khal. You will obey or die. Is that clear? I shouted once again. The Dothraki followed strength, and for now, I was the strongest one. After taking control over Moro's Khal, I marched back to Daenerys. I wanted to see her. After all, I was happy. I had won this battle, officially taking the first big step towards my conquest. I had obtained 9,000 riders and able warriors, and in total, I even had some blood riders now, that called me blood of my blood. A curious thing about the Dothraki, blood riders fulfill the roles of guards, brothers, shadows, and apparently friends to the Khal they follow in ways that run way deeper than the oaths of the Kingsguard to the king on Westeros. The Khal, in this case me, and his blood riders commonly refer to each other as blood of my blood. Should I die, they would do everything in their power to avenge me, and would not stop until the one who killed me dies or they themselves die. 4 Khal more and I would be able to take on Drogo. My plans were going smoothly, with the next step after taking the Dothraki being conquering the free cities. As we rode, my guard aka Blood Rider approached and said, Michael, we need to ride to Viz Dothrak. The Dosh Kalain have to bless your journey as a new big Khal. In Dothraki culture, many might take the title of a Khal and might even have a Khalasar following him, but only those with the approval of the Dosh Kalain can genuinely be considered Khals. Of course, their blessing doesn't come that easily. For a Khal to be regarded as a real Khal, he has to have at least a Khalasar of 5,000 Dothraki riders with him. Which is why my new blood rider is telling me to go to Viz Dothrak. After all, I was now leading over 10,000 Dothraki. By Dothraki law I was a fully fledged Khal now. All I needed was make it technically official was the blessing of the widows. We will, but we are going for my wife first. I nodded. While I originally wanted to see the Dothraki city, my first priority was to have my wife back with me. After that I would go to Horsetown. Chapter 43. Chapter 42. After going back to the camp where I had left Daenerys, I took my wife with me and departed with my Khalasar to Viz Dothrak. From what my Khalasar had told me, the city was a fortnight away, located in the northeast of the vast Dothraki Sea, beneath the Mother of Mountains. From what I could gather from the books and my Khalasar, Viz Dothrak had no walls, which made for a pretty lousy defense against aggressors if you ask me, but then again, who would be so stupid to attack them? The sacred city was also primarily ruled and inhabited by slaves and the Dosh Kalain, the wives of all the Khals who have come before, aka dying. Within the sacred city, it is forbidden to wear a blade or shed a free man's blood. In short, our trip would be long and quite dull. That was if we didn't find a Khalasar or someone on our way there. So I will become a Khaleesi? Daenerys inquired, approaching with a smile on her face. She somehow found that amusing. It means queen in their language, you should know that. I chuckled. Oh, I know, but I am a queen already. Daenerys giggled. But with this, you will multiply your queen powers. I chuckled. I suppose that makes the trip worth it. Daenerys smiled as we continued our trip. 1 month later. Our trip to Viz Dothrak was uneventful. The only thing that was out of the ordinary was the amount of time that took us to get here. They said 2 weeks. 2 weeks my ass. Besides that, everything was fine. We didn't find any Khalasars in our path to the sacred city, nor we found slavers or any other threat I would have to subdue to continue. Part of me was happy the trip was so dull, but another part of me wanted to make this trip even more worth it. But now it was too late. I was in front of the incredibly breathtaking gates of the city, also known as the Horse Gate of Viz Dothrak. For what I had read, this was the most impressive part of the sacred city, and so far I couldn't agree more. It was marveling to see those 2 gigantic bronze stallions whose hooves were meeting 100 feet above the ground, forming a pointed arch that gave the feeling you were entering Valhalla itself. Truly impressive, I muttered as I passed with my horse. It is, the books don't honor its glory. Daenerys agreed with me. For the Dothraki this was nothing to be impressed, and the Ironborn didn't care much for it. On the other hand, my horses were having a moment, a fangirl moment. After 5 long minutes of admiring the gate, we found ourselves approaching the city, and the feeling of wonder died immediately. How the fuck can some make such an epic gate to enter the city but stops there? The so-called sacred city was nothing but an overglorified camp with slaves. The more we approached the city, the less impressed I got. Seriously, I expected something more city-like. Well, they stopped being awesome at the gate, I muttered, making Daenerys giggled in agreement. After we arrived and settled, I was taken to meet the widows, so that they would name me a Khal, a mere formality, but an important one for them. You are the foreigner, a widow said, eyeing me carefully. In a way, I am, I nodded. Yet you have become a Khal. Your Khalasar speaks a great deal of your strength, another widow added. I have yet to taste defeat, so they are right, I chuckled. We have seen your connection with the horses, you are a Dothraki in everything, but birth, the leader of the crones said, with wonderment in her eyes, we take anything and make it ours, so by our laws I don't see why you shouldn't wear the title you so well deserve. Thanks, your approval means nothing to me, that what I wanted to say, but I knew how to pick my fights. I thank you for your wisdom, I smiled. Have you taken more than one wife? A widow asked. No, I only have one, my Khaleesi, my wife is Daenerys Mormont, I informed them. Very well, Khal, you have our blessing, the leader of the crones said, as she added, we want to meet your Khaleesi, please send her over to us later. Sure, I nodded as I took my leave, and just like that, I was a Khal but with license. That night after Daenerys had her talk with the crones, she told me they had confirmed her pregnancy. My answer to if I would be happy with a kid was answered that same moment. I was happy beyond comprehension. I couldn't believe I was going to be a father. The thought of it really made me smile. As I was high on happiness, the crones called me, Daenerys, and my Khalassar to a ritual. They had confirmed she was pregnant, and now they wanted to read our omens. Once we were all where the crones had asked us to go, they gave Daenerys a horse heart and instructed her to eat it. I told her she didn't have to do it. I didn't care for the bad omens and stuff, but Daenerys wanted to do it anyway. With a smile, I walked down to my seat as I saw how my wife devour a raw heart, while disgusting and puke-provoking. I was too happy to really focus on the fact that she was eating an appalling heart. All of a sudden, my Khalassar started to chant something that brought me back memories. Plizif Cub, 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 Plizif Cub. This was the vision I had a few months ago. I reliving the same event again but in real life. Now I understood why I was happy. Even covered in blood her beauty shines like a diamond. Maybe this is what people call the shine of pregnancy. She certainly looks better now that I know she is pregnant. Visfin Sagery Sheezeries. 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 That chant was new, and while my Dothraki was quite fluent at this point I had to focus to translate what they were saying. After hearing the chant a couple of times I couldn't help but smile. They were calling my unborn son the stallion who mounts the world. While I thought that title would be given to me, I didn't mind. Like his father he was already showing everyone who was the fucking boss. So with a huge smile on my face, I started to chant with them. Chapter 44, Chapter 43. After receiving the great news that my wife was pregnant, and the prophecy that my kids would bring the world together, I decided to take a week to celebrate with my wife in V's Dothrak. I was spoiling her rotten with everything her heart craved and desired. I was happy, but deep down I was scared. I had made an enemy I wasn't sure how to beat yet, a fucking demon, probably a god, but also, I now had a reason even bigger than myself to find a way to win this battle of light and darkness. I think we will have 2 boys, Daenerys said, smiling, resting her beautiful head on my chest as I brushed her hair with my fingers. I think we will have a boy and a girl. I smiled as I yawned. It was pretty late, and with all the celebration I had been doing I didn't get much rest, but I'll be happy either way. A boy and a girl, that sounds nice too. Daenerys yawned back, getting closer to me to be spooned. It does. I smiled as we continued to talk for hours about how we pictured our kids would look like, with her exquisite Valyrian features and my North Standard ones mixed in the baby oven. I couldn't help but wonder, how would they look like? Would they look like me? Like her? A mix of both? I was frankly excited to see them already. Eventually, at some point in the conversation, we fall asleep, happy. Once again, I found myself in this wretched dream world. Just when I thought I was out of this shithole, here I am, standing on an even colder weather, freezing my ass off. I will inject caffeine into my veins after I wake up, I swear it, I muttered, as I started to walk around. At one point something would have to happen, and I would wake up. I only hoped this time the demon didn't force me into another twilight coma. Eventually, after what I feel it was hours of walking through the blizzard, I found the house that I used to hide during my last visit to this dream world. I am not quite sure what draws me back here considering the house was the place that I met Freddy Krueger on steroids, but once again, I find myself inside the house. So far I hadn't seen nor the demon, nor his White Walkers, so perhaps this would be a good vision. As if, I bet the moment I lower my guard some paranormal shit will happen, I chuckled drily as I explored the house. After all, last time I didn't have any time to do it. It doesn't take me long to find that the house has an attic, so with a deep breath, I found myself climbing the rickety ladder leading probably to something that would scar me or some shit. With a strong pull, I tear the door to the attic off. An alarmed but yet pretty familiar caw, and a flutter of wings inform me of the presence of a raven inside the attic. Well, this is new. The raven flew close to me, eyeing me with wonder. Are you secretly a demon waiting to scare the crap out of me? I asked with a chuckle. No, but I can be pretty scary. The raven huffed as if I had insulted him. Oh, I bet, I chuckle. You can understand me. Well, this is certainly new, the raven said, tilting his head, puzzlement on his little black eyes. Why are you here? No, for pleasure, that's for sure, I sighed, but I keep coming back over and over and over again. Then you probably still have something to see. The raven flew to my shoulder as he hummed, I wonder what. We don't get many visitors here, even those so-called green seers stay away from these parts. I can wonder why, I retorted sarcastically. It was more than obvious no one, in their right fucking mind would come to this place. Well, then keep going. You have to follow your guts. That's how things work around here. The raven chuckled as he pointed me with this little wing to continue on my mission. I will stay by your side. I have this weird feeling you are someone I have to love. Weird, huh? Suppressing the need to laugh at that, I started to survey the attic, taking a good look around, and what I see doesn't shout destiny or something like that. The attic was full of furniture and broken glasses that cluttered the small attic. Nothing unusual so far, but as the raven said, I had to follow my gut, and so I did. Eventually a ray of light. A single beam of light that sneaked its way down from a crack in the roof. It felt warm, welcoming like the evening sun of summer, which considering how fucking cold it was outside was no possible. Perhaps this was it? So with that in mind, I took a deep breath, taking in the as I approached the light that for some reason I couldn't reach. It was as if it was moving out of my reach the more I walked, or perhaps it was guiding me somewhere. This theory proved to be right when the light stopped moving, illuminating in the circle a footprint that reminded why I was afraid to come here in the first place. Recognizing those claw marks, I immediately felt an involuntary shiver runs down my spine. The memories of that dream resurfacing as I gulped. This is the demon you talked about earlier, right? The raven that I had quite honestly forgotten was on my shoulder inquired. Yes, it is. I nodded as I slowly regained myself back together. I had 2 new reasons to be brave and victorious. So deciding not to go back down, I start peering around nervously as I continued to follow the footprints. Eventually, I began to catch glimpses of something glowing with a faint dimming light, and like every horror movie was in the direction the footprints were leading me. I missed the days my dreams involved naked ladies or food. I sighed as I followed the footprints. Heart thumping, I carefully make my way to the glowing item, finding that it was a simple mirror. There was nothing special about the mirror, except maybe that it was taller than me. Still, besides that, it was a pretty common mirror. The mirror itself was standing propped up against the wall, with faint glow muffled by the rags covering it. I bet you a fucking ton of corn that then moment I move those rags some paranormal shit will happen, I chuckled, eyeing the raven on my shoulder. The mirror, it's glowing red. Even I know that's a red flag. I can tell something wrong it's about to happen, but it's your destiny. A pretty fucked one, but yours nonetheless, the raven said, denying my bet, and stating the obvious. Hooray for fucking destinies, I muttered. Taking a deep breath, wanting this to be over, I removed the rags covering the mirror. For a moment nothing happened, and I was genuinely starting to believe I was safe, but I invoked Murphy's Law with my thinking and shit went down. You came back. The voice of the demon thundered inside my skull. Not really caring to hear him, I pulled out my sword and tried to smash the mirror, but once again, I was stopped by the shadows. But unlike last time where I had enough freedom to move, I was completely immobilized. Stop this, the raven said, trying to defend me, just to be pushed like a rag doll across the room. Not that you will send me your champions to fight, I inquired. Maybe I will just end you here, the demon cackled in amusement as he tightened his grip on me. I didn't want to die again, my wife, my unborn kids. I couldn't allow this shit to happen, so with all my might I started to push the demon back to no avail. My desperate tries to survive only made him chuckle in delight. Ronard, it's okay. Silence now, stop struggling, this will be over quickly. Don't be afraid. Don't think of what you left behind. Just enjoy this beautiful moment. It is so much more vibrant than the darkness that awaits you. I will give you this moment to cherish this. That is my gift to you. Existence is behind you now, enjoy the everlasting silence that comes after, the demon said as he started to increase the amount of strength he was using. I can die like this. My mind was racing, trying to find a way to overcome this shitty dream. I had to survive, now more than ever, if I am to be your fucking champion, God of Light. Do something. Very well, I will. A voice warm and comforting resonated in my mind, telling me that somehow everything would be okay. Die. Just as the demon was about to end, my life flames that came out of nowhere engulfed my body, pushing the demon out, burning him, turning his shadowy form slowly into ashes. So you decided to intervene. How unlike you. Very well. Took you long enough, I breathed out as I felt the fire that by all means should be burning me, healing me. You had to accept you were my champion. You had to need me, for me to come. The fire moved as the voice talked. You have accepted your duty, so don't worry. I will make sure the darkness doesn't target you ever again in this realm. I know you know your mission, but I have to let you know, darkness doesn't play fair. He will cheat and do whatever it takes to kill you through his champion so that he can consume the world. So while he won't attack you, here again, he is still a threat. You don't say. The God of Light, more like the God of obvious shit. Of course, the dark side would play dirty. It was on their fucking description. I put the destiny of this world on your hands. The fire moved, as the voice added, good luck, champion of light, son of the fire. As the fire started to burn the world around me, I turned my eyes to the raven that had tried to save me, to find him waving at me with his wing happily. Champion of Light, Son of the Fire. I was starting to collect titles. Chapter 45, Chapter 44 Son of the Fire, Champion of the Light. The sound good and all, but in reality they really meant was that I had more responsibilities, but I suppose it had its benefits. At the very least, this time, the fucking god that chose me to be his champion without even consulting me, might I add, helped me. He said the darkness would not target me again. How was he going to keep that promise? I really don't care. For me, it was a win-win situation. He keeps the shadows away. I focus on stopping the long night. We all win. I really need a break. I sighed as I stood out my bed. Daenerys still sleeping soundly. All right, back into track. Conquering the Dothraki, with a soft smile forming on my face seeing my beautiful pregnant wife sleep. I left the tent to start preparing my men to leave. As I left the tent, I noticed that the city had more people than it had yesterday, and by the looks of it was another Khal that had arrived while I was sleeping. Well, this is interesting, I muttered. Whoever this Khal was, could be my next target. That of course depending on the numbers his Khalasar had. If they outnumbered me by a lot I would have to wait. All I had to do was put a raven to follow him and wait until they leave the city. With that in mind, I walked around trying the city trying to find the Khal. I was curious as to who I would find. Maybe it was Drogo, in which case I could, instead of hunting him outside in a later day, I could just simply challenge him to a one-on-one duel. He was proud, too proud for his own good, and would accept in a beat. I walked around the market with a simple mission to find the Khal. As I entered deeper into the market I saw the Dothraki trading and exchanging things. This was the one place they found their stuff without killing each other. Their numbers were massive. Just in the market I could see hundreds and hundreds of them mixing together in the background like ants. The more and more I walked the clearer the truth became. I was sure that this army belonged to Drogo, or at the very least to another big Khal. Hours passed by until I found one of the blood riders of this Khalasar. I followed him back to his Khal. I was getting tired of looking by myself, and I had promised my ravens a day off to celebrate. I was increasing the flock with 2 babies. They were happy, and decided to discuss things like diaper duty and stuff. Yes, my ravens wanted to change diapers, and teach my kids how to fly. I would have to explain to them later that they won't be able to fly. So today I was on my own, which made this scouting mission extra difficult. Until today I didn't realize how dependent I was of them. Finding one Dothraki in the sea full of them was the equivalent of trying to find a Waldo while being blind. I want to speak with your Khal. I approached the blood rider. There wasn't much he could do besides saying no. Why? He asked, a bit surprised I knew how to speak his language fluently. I have something to offer him, I informed the man, being as cryptic as possible. The man, in turn, eyed me with suspicion for a second before he nodded and with a hand sign told me to follow him. It took the blood rider roughly 15 minutes to lead me to the tent where his Khal was resting. He probably thought I wanted to offer the Khal some sort of deal, maybe for the slaves he brought, or something similar to that. Later he would probably blame himself later for the death of his precious Khal. Wait here, the blood rider informed me as he entered the tent, probably to explain the Khal the situation before he presented me. As I waited for the Khal to ask me in, my mind started to drift off to what happened in my dream. Those titles I was given, I kinda felt they meant something, besides an absurd amount of responsibility. But what? Khal Drogo will see you, the blood rider said, confirming my original suspicions. Khal Drogo was here. No wonder the city felt so full of life, in a bizarre way. Very well, I nodded as I entered the tent. The tent was moderately big, covered in furs and many other items, from food to alcohol. Drogo was sitting on the floor, drinking, not really giving me much importance. He didn't even have the decency to look at me. You are very foolish, are you not? Everyone in the tent went stiff. I just had insulted their Khal, in their own city. For them, I was a foreigner. You are the foolish. Drogo stood, probably cursing that he couldn't cut my head within the sacred city. My name is Khal Ronard, I announced, getting a few surprised looks in the crowd inside his tent. I want to fight you one-on-one, outside the sacred city. If I win, I will take everything from you, and in the impossible case you win. I paused for a second before laughing. Sorry, but my mind can't process such a stupid idea. Me losing to you, really stupid. A duel, one-on-one. Drogo approached me, enough for me to see he was taller than me, by a few inches. Sure, I will gladly take your head out and take down your neck for this insult, and after that, I will take your army with me. What an idiot, but being fair with him, he was probably the strongest normal human in this world. The confidence he had on his own power was strongly built on his unmatched record of wins and victories in war and battles. For him, I was a 16-year-old trying to die early. Then let us ride, only us and our blood riders, I offered. I knew the blood riders would try to kill me after I killed his Khal, so why delay that fact? Drogo smiled, amused by my words as he nodded. As you wish, I will piss your corpse, kid. You are no Khal. If you are counting on me dying to take a piss, I would recommend you taking that piss now, otherwise you will die with it inside. I chuckled as I started to walk out of the tent. And yes, I am a Khal. Ask the Dosh Khalane. Drogo, while a savage, was a man of his word. After our conversation he informed his Khalazar that he would come with my head, before riding with me out of the sacred city, to duel me. His blood riders besides him, Drogo had 3 blood riders, while I only had 1, but what they didn't know was that my 2 horses were pumped and ready to fight. Asterisk, we are going to crush your fucking skulls down? Asterisk, one of my horses said in a voice tone that would work perfectly for a heavy metal singer. Asterisk, you guys are going down. Asterisk, my horse, the one that I was mounting, said, hooves flexing slightly, ready to attack. I inwardly chuckled as I unmounted my horse, showing some respect. I had come to this duel without armor, considering that the Dothraki don't use it. After all, I wanted to be fair with him. You will make a great toilet, Drogo spat as I chuckled. You seriously need to change your trash talk, is quite depressing. I smiled. Drogo lunged forward, quickly sprinting towards me and coming closer, then jabbing out his arak in attempt to cut. He was way faster than I anticipated. In the blink of an eye he was in front of me, but reflex kicked in, and I ducked forward, trying to cut his arm. Drogo noticed this at the last second and dodged my attack, only getting a small, bleeding slice. Drogo eyed his cut and smiled as he sprinted at me again, but this time I was ready for his speed, so I just raised my sword and blocking his attack, the two blades clanged together, creating a rumbling sound that engulfed the planes we were using for our duel. The weight of my sword was dragging him down. Drogo immediately noticed that I was stronger than him physically and decided to change his approach in battle to his superb agility. It didn't take him long to start pushing back hard. He was very strong. Without my super body this battle would be impossible for me. I smiled as I jumped back, dodging a horizontal attack. Taking a deep breath, I dashed forward with my Valyrian blade out in front of me as I attempted to pierce his heart and end it all, but in a surprisingly good timed dodge he ducked under my blade and grasped my stomach. With his arak, I of course noticed this and avoided lethal damage, but the cut was still painful. Not deep enough to be troubling, but deep enough to make me feel pain. Shit, that hurt. I cursed as I parried his attacks. It took me a couple of seconds to recover, and with the pain in my stomach I was ready to end this. He was strong, so no reason to be going easy of him. With that in mind I dashed forward and a blinding speed that surprised Drogo, grabbing his head and pushing it down to the ground with earth-shattering force, making him drop his arak. Once he was on the floor I proceed to slam my knee repeatedly into his face, paying him with interest the cut he delivered. When I was done smashing my knee into his face I go up and thrusted my blade through his heart. Blood splattered everywhere, but by the mashed potato look his head had, he probably died way before my blade destroyed his heart. Now come, I don't have all day, try and avenge your Khal and die, or kill yourselves, either way don't waste my time, I said as I turned to the shocked blood riders, but before I can take a step forward I feel something wetting my shoe. Looking down I see that Drogo was pissing himself. Great, I told him, but nobody listens. Chapter 46, Chapter 45. Defeating Drogo was a bit harder than I expected. He was so far the strongest fighter I had fought since I got here. He was powerful and had experience to back that power up. His blood riders, on the other hand, were pretty average. My horses took care of them. It was both hilarious and somewhat disturbing seeing my horses beating the crap out of them. What really disturbed me was that one of my horses tried to teabag one of the blood riders. My ravens had taught them that. I was sure of it, which made me realize that sharing pop culture with my animals might have been a bad idea. Let's go back to the city, I sighed, as my blood rider nodded, clearly disturbed by how his horse brutally killed one of the blood riders. The news of Drogo's death brought some mixed emotions to his, now my Khalasar. Like always I offered them two options, submission or death. They choose submission. Daenerys woke up soon after my absorption of Drogo's Khalasar. She had overslept, and I had left pretty specific orders to my men to not let anyone wake her up. She was not happy at all that I had left to duel with a very fearsome Dothraki warrior that was famous for being nearly invincible in battle, without even telling her. Why didn't you tell me? Daenerys was fuming, not angry but worried, touching the bandages in my abdomen, with tears forming on her eyes. You were sleeping, and it was kind of something of the moment. I shrugged as I hugged her. He barely cut me. Don't worry. I worry, that's all I can do. Daenerys cried. What would I do if you die? What would our kids do? With a hand I brushed the tears of her face, as I kissed her forehead. I'm sorry, I just act. I fail to see how things can affect you, but don't worry, I will always come back to you, no matter what I have to face. Besides, if I get a scar I will look sexy, a promise I intended to keep. You better keep that promise, you stupid bear. Daenerys chuckled, burying her face on my chest, as her last tears dropped down. What promise? Coming back? Or being more sexy? I chuckled. Both. Daenerys laughed. I'm still mad at you. All right, I will always come back, sexier. I laughed with her. That works, Daenerys chuckled. I stayed with Daenerys in my arms for hours talking and chatting about normal stuff. I wasn't a king nor she was a queen at that moment. We simply were a couple enjoying a nice talk. Increasing my numbers so exponentially fast made the logistics a tad complicated. I first had to kill some KO that wanted to take this chance and become Khals. After that I had to make sure we would have enough food and stuff for 50,000 men, and to add the cherry to the top, I had ensure all my new men knew my rules. My only two rules: we don't rape and we don't kill children. They begrudgingly accepted, so to ensure they wouldn't betray the first chance they had, I made all their horses kneel. This in turn made them considerably more compliant to my orders. To the point I now had 6 new blood riders, whose names I had yet to learn, but who can blame? It was hard to memorize so many names. So in the end, after absorbing such a big Khalasar, I decided to stay in the V's Dothrak for a couple of months, so that I could contact Ilrio with a new shipment with stuff like medical supplies and etc., and organize my plan. Big your army is, winning we are, Rhoda said as he landed on my shoulder. Yes, you are correct my little feathery fellow, I chuckled. Robert Baratheon POV 2 months later. Varys had informed me that the dragon bitch had married to no other than the little backstabbing bastard of that kid, Ronard Mormont. Not only that, but the bitch was pregnant. I knew all along I was making the right decision breaking the betrothal between those two, but even after the betrayal, I suffered. After the betrayal Ned suffered. Ned refused to get the girl killed, nor the unborn bastards she would bring into the world. I won't dirty my hands that way, Robert, not even for you, Ned growled, as left resigning his position as the Hand of the King. What a foolish honorable idiot, but I will make this right. With the help of Varys, I had hired many assassins to kill the girl and the brat. Whoever succeeded would get a lord title and some lands. More wine, my lord, my wine boy offered. Don't ask, just fill the damn cup. I growled. Varys POV. The game was starting to change from schemes to a path of violence and destruction. Unfortunately for Ronard, I couldn't keep his secret any longer, for I had to keep my cover as the Master of Whispers, but I had bought him more than enough time. He had done so much during this year in Essos, that I frankly doubt the assassins will succeed or even reach him. That man is as hard to kill as they come. But the young bear wasn't stupid, nor misinformed. I'm sure he will know about this before the assassins even start their job. I hope the young dragoness succeeded in taming the bear. I sighed. When I offered him this betrothal was for one reason and one reason only, so when the day came to put Aegon in the throne he would support him, but if my plan didn't help I might have helped to create the biggest threat to the Aegon, the rightful ruler. I can help but wonder if the bear knows about Aegon. If so, what are his plans? The young griff, and the young bear. I mused as I wrote a letter to Illyrio about the situation of the realm, and, one with instructions to help the young griff should the need arise to, knowing full well who would win between a fight between young bear and the young griff. I was loyal, not stupid. Asterisk, my boy Ronard will put a new dick on you, just so he can cut it again. Caught. You bald dickless bitch. Asterisk, unbeknownst to him a raven was nearby, the same raven he intended to use. Ned Stark POV. Ronard had married the Targaryen girl. Both the Iron Islands and the Bear Island had stopped communications with us since the betrothal broke, and Robert wanted to start another fucking war. I shouldn't have accepted this, ever. With Ronard married to Sansa the realm would be fine, but I had to let Robert once again do as he pleased. Sansa hated me for it, hated me for marching her with what she called an entitled little bastard as a future husband. She hated me for pushing Ronard out of her life. She hated Cat even more. Prepare my things, we are leaving to Winterfell in a week. I ordered my men. Sansa wanted to go home, so did Arya, and frankly so did I. Tywin Lannister POV. The young lord had played beyond my expectations. I wanted to shackle him, and he took the chains and hit me with them. He married someone with a powerful claim to the throne. He was gathering an army. He was getting ready for war. He had been for a long time. I just now realized. But even the mightiest fall, and he will fall, for what is a bear to a lion? I wanted to use you, but I will have to end you now. I sighed as I took a sip of wine. Maybe I should send Gregor Clegane to kill him, and rape the girl. It would be quite poetic to repeat that act once again. Asterisk. Imma kill him. Lady Maitcorn will give birth to 2 healthy ravens? And we the Raven Legion will ensure nothing happens to them. No overgrown monkey will stop us. Asterisk, the raven that was listening to Tywin caught in rage. What an annoying bird, Tywin sighed. Asterisk, you won't succeed, Ka? My master will fucking end you. Asterisk, chapter 47, chapter 46. 2 months later. The news of my marriage to Daenerys spread like a pandemic across the realm, which in turn made me the #1 enemy of Westeros to some. Assassination attempts were a common occurrence now. Merchants and other individuals would try to end Daenerys' life every now and then. The reason behind this varies. When he offered me a deal, I knew he wanted something from me. I initially thought he wanted to put Viserys on the throne, or any Targaryen for that matter. I was correct in this assumption. What I didn't know until a month ago was there was another Targaryen roaming free. I really should have read the books more in depth. I sighed as I read the letter Varys intended for Illyrio. Aegon Targaryen, or how they call him, the young griff. Varys had somehow managed to keep this little secret away from me. But now that I knew what to do with him, what to do? Should I kill him? I knew close to zero about him. For all I knew he could be a great guy, but it didn't matter if he was the best person in the world. I wasn't going to give up my plans of conquering Westeros and getting throne. I suppose I could offer him what I had offered everyone so far. You either submit or die. He will have the choice. Now with Varys, my decision was set the moment someone tried to poison Daenerys. I don't care how much he has to keep his cover. I will kill the bald bastard, and make him regret ever making an enemy out of me. If I wasn't as informed as I was, Daenerys would be dead and so would be my babies. No matter what he was thinking when he revealed our information, or why he did it, what mattered was that he put in danger the life of my unborn children and wife, and for that he would die. Painfully. Tywin Lannister, another soon-to-be-dead man. They really oversell the old lion. He really thinks Gregor Clegane will even see a glimpse of Daenerys. He will die before he can even breath close to her. We are leaving V's Dothrak today, right? Daenerys entered my tent, with her 4th-month baby bump showing. Every morning she would wake up even more beautiful than the last day, shining like my own little star. Yes, I smiled as I kneeled to kiss her bountiful baby bump. We have been 4 months here. We have everything we need, but if you feel like staying we could. I don't want to tire you. I'm pregnant, not made out of crystal. Daenerys giggled, brushing my hair with her fingers. Is there a difference? I teased. Daenerys just laughed at my tease as she added her own. I might be made out of crystal, but look at you, the strongest man in the kneeling to my fragile pregnant feet. I chuckled, not quite ready to lose. But I recall you getting on your knees pretty often for me. All right, let's call it a tie. Daenerys laughed. Fair enough, I nodded as I stood up giving her a kiss. We should be leaving tonight, let your handmaidens know. All right. Yes, Daenerys nodded in agreement as she started to walk out of the tent. By the way, will I ride my horse, or? Abso-fucking-lutely not. You will ride in a cart so padded with comfort you will feel you are floating. I didn't know if riding a horse was a good idea with all the movement this brought. Alrighty, Daenerys chuckled as she caressed her belly. Your papa is quite overprotective, isn't he? I am, and I wear that shit with honor. I laughed. By the way, can you tell your ravens to stop trying to brood my belly? Daenerys added, trying hard not to laugh. I wake up every morning with 10 to 20 ravens on my belly. Asterisk Ka? No brooding? How in the hell will your eggs hatch then? No brooding this generation. I swear. Ka, asterisk. HRMMM brooding we will, stop us you can't. YRSSS. Asterisk Ka, what they said. We will continue with the extra brooding to ensure they are strong ravens Ka, asterisk. Unfortunately, I laughed as I shrugged, is out of my hands. Very well, Daenerys sighed, I will see you later. I continued to arrange all the matters I had to before leaving. Besides me were the eggs I had bought so long ago, my ravens still brooding them. Perhaps it was time to try and hatch them. I was called the Son of the Fire, the Champion of the Light by the God of Fire himself, and those titles fit perfectly with this situation. Or at least that is what I wanted to believe. I remembered from the books that dragon eggs are notoriously difficult to hatch, and even though they can maintain the spark of life inside of them for decades if not centuries, the secret key to hatching them seems to involve some form of blood magic. As the housewords of the Targaryens hint, it requires fire and blood. And considering how Daenerys hatched them, I had a general idea how to do it. To do so, I would have to burn the eggs in roaring flames, while another creature is simultaneously being burned alive, a life in exchange for a life. Fire and blood. Dragons in the wild probably just used prey animals to fulfill this purpose, but I wasn't sure an animal would work. Besides they were extremely loyal to me, so human sacrifice will do the trick quite nicely. It was at least worth the shot. Maybe I could put Viserys in the flames. It would certainly be interesting to see if he can burn or not. Time to burn these eggs, I chuckled. Asterisk Ka? You will not Gordon Ramsay our babies? Ka asterisk. I sighed. I would now have to explain to them why I wanted to do it. They had grown quite protective of the eggs. Allow me to explain. I chuckled. Ned Stark POV. The seed is strong. Jon Arryn's last words. I had finally found out what he meant. Robert didn't have any lawful children. Cersei had cheated on him. I was glad I had sent my daughters back to Winterfell a few months back, for what I had to do would bring the realm to chaos. And here I was sitting by myself waiting for someone to confront the lies. Cersei, the person I wanted to talk to arrived and walked up to me. You're in pain. Cersei pointed to my shoulder, mocking my injury after the altercation I had with her brother, her lover. I shift uncomfortably with my cane as I slowly stand. I've had worse, my lady. Cersei feigned interest as she added, perhaps it's time to go home. The South doesn't seem to agree with you. This wasn't going nowhere, so time to push it. I know the truth Jon Arryn died for. Cersei eyed me for a second with her eyes showing mixed emotions between worry and pride. Do you, Lord Stark? Is that why you called me here, to pose me riddles? I noticed her fear, but my eyes drifted to the bruise she had on her face. I inquired pointing at her bruise, has Robert done this before? Cersei smiled, as she shook her head, Jaime would have killed him. My brother is worth 1,000 of your friends. I glared at her, your brother, or your lover. Cersei simply smirked at me, making me realize I was right on my hunch. She then stood up proudly, as she added, the Targaryens wed brothers and sisters for 300 years to keep bloodlines pure. Jaime and I are more than brother and sister. We shared a womb. We came into this world together. We belong together. All of this was starting to make sense. It wasn't Tyrion who pushed Bran, it was one of them. My son saw them and they tried to silence him still. My son saw you with him. I said with my blood boiling in anger. Cersei took a deep breath nodding as she added, do you love your children? What kind of stupid question was that? With all my heart. I answered not skipping a beat. Cersei smiled, no more than I love mine. I scoffed, and they're all Jaime's. My comment made Cersei laugh, thank the gods. In the rare event that Robert leaves his horse for long enough to stumble drunk into my bed, I finish him off in other ways. In the morning, he doesn't remember. Cersei always hated Robert, and this was her way to make him pay, by making him fathered kids that weren't his. You've always hated him. Cersei eyed me in disbelief, as she added, hated him? I worshipped him? Every girl in the Seven Kingdoms dreamed of him, but he was mine by oath. And when I finally saw him on our wedding day in the Sept of Baelor, lean and fierce and Blackbeard, it was the happiest moment of my life. Then that night he crawled on top of me, stinking of wine and did what he did, what little he could do, and whispered in my ear, Lyanna, your sister was a corpse and I was a living girl and he loved her more than me. I can understand her pain somewhat, but what she did was unforgivable. When the king returns from his hunt, I'll tell him the truth. You must be gone by then, you and your children. I will not have their blood on my hands. Go as far away as you can, with as many men as you can. Because wherever you go, Robert's wrath will follow you? Cersei laughed, and she spat, and what of my wrath, Lord Stark? You should have taken the realm for yourself. Jaime told me about the day King's Landing fell. He was sitting in the Iron Throne and you made him give it up. All you needed to do was climb the steps yourself. Such a sad mistake. I eyed her before I shook my head. I've made many mistakes in my life, but that wasn't one of them. Cersei smiled coldly. Oh, but it was. When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. There is no middle ground. With that she left. I could only hope she would take my advice and leave. Khal, he dead. He just yeeted himself. Khal Chapter 48, Chapter 47. After gathering all my belongings and ensuring Daenerys had the best and most comfortable cart to travel around Essos this world could offer, I left with my new Khalasar to hunt down the remaining Dothraki tribes. I had also constructed a very detailed security team to ensure her safety, with a personal guard of 500 men at her call. That, of course, without counting ravens and horses. I wasn't worried about the assassins. They, after all, were a bunch of idiots trying to become lords, and this was their ticket to the easy life, or so they thought. Killing us was harder than killing Robert himself. They were bound to fail, but even though I knew that their failure was imminent, anger fueled my very core, consuming my soul in a spiral of hate and anger. The idea of Daenerys dying, the idea of holding the lifeless bodies of my children in my arms, as impossible as it was, infuriated me beyond human comprehension. Torturing the assassins before killing was a quick relief of this feeling, but it wasn't enough. I would not be satisfied until all of those who dare to target my family are destroyed. Not like this wasn't any different to my original plan. No, it was the same, but this time my drive was stronger, more aggressive. My reasons to take the throne had changed. No, they were the same, but I had a few extra reasons to do it now. Khal, we located the next biggest Khalasar. I turned to see in amusement the raven that had landed in the head of my horse, bowing politely. How far away? I inquired. A week in horse or so, cave. Right now I had to focus on getting these savages under me. I would have more than enough time to get my well-deserved retribution. They better enjoy this time I'm away, for it is more vibrant than the darkness that awaits them. Let's go, I ordered my men, changing our course. Daenerys POV. So much has changed since the day I met him. I was afraid of him at first, of what represented being his. Yet, he made me feel like nothing in the world mattered, only us. And little by little I found myself craving his company, his laugh, his stupid sense of humor, how he smelled, how he kissed me in the mornings before leaving. And without even noticing it, I fell head down in love. He made it so easy to love him. And here we are, I smiled, touching my belly softly, but the flutter of many wings snapped me out of my train of thought. Behind me there were around 20 ravens, all staring at me intensely. You guys want to brood my belly, right? I inquired. A few months ago talking with animals would have been ludicrous, but now, not so much. Caw, the ravens nodded in unison. And you won't take a no for an answer. I chuckled. Caw caw, the ravens nodded, confirming my suspicions. Back to Ronard POV. With my new army, fighting the other Dothraki tribes got exponentially easier. The Dothraki weren't known for their strategic battle forms. I had just conquered another tribe with 10,000 warriors. Why would they fight someone with an army of 50,000 soldiers with those numbers? I don't know. Well, I did. Dothraki quite straightforward. They would go like idiots into battle, and try to destroy anything on their way with pure strength. Normally this would work if they had bigger numbers. But they didn't. So after killing their Khal, once again I had increased my numbers, and thanks to the idiot blood riders that followed him I finally had my fire sacrifice to try and hatch my dragons. How are you doing? I said as I entered my wife's cart. Nothing, she was covered in ravens brooding her belly. Your ravens are brooding me. Daenerys glared at me playfully. What do you think? I think they are doing a wonderful job. I shrugged. So how many soldiers do we have now? Daenerys sighed. I could see she wanted to laugh but was too stubborn to do it. Well, I think almost 60,000, I hummed. I hadn't really counted how many we have exactly, but it was along those lines. How are my babies doing? Fine, your feathery friends are seeing to it, Daenerys chuckled. Caw, we are ensuring they get the best brooding, caw, we are giving them the brooding they deserve, The ravens brooding her pregnant belly were proudly stating their awesome brooding skills. I can see that. I chuckled as I approached to kiss her. I wanted to tell her soon I would try and hatch the dragon's eggs. One of her dreams was to see a dragon, but if this didn't work it would only disappoint her. So I would wait until I had those babies out of their eggs. Well, I'm off to rearrange some stuff. I just got more men into my banners, and before the logistics of all this shit comes back to bite me in the ass, I need to do it. Take care, Daenerys smiled, giving me a kiss. Don't come back late. I need my personal pillow. Oh, that sounds like quite the invitation. I smirked at her, getting a playful punch to my shoulder. My, that pregnancy is making you quite volatile. I suppose, Daenerys giggled. 2 blood riders, 3 eggs, and lots of fire. I had all the ingredients to hatch them, according to what I saw and read of it in my past life. But just to be sure I went the extra mile. I replicated the exact same thing Daenerys did on the show to hatch them. I tied the blood riders, making sure they couldn't move, putting the eggs above them as I set the wood beneath them in fire. As I did so, the voice of the god of light resonated in my head. Caw, my babies son of the fire, champion of the light. A part of me wanted to touch the fire, as it was starting to spread. Logically I knew this would burn me, but I still wanted to do it. Maybe I was crazy, maybe I had been affected beyond repair in this world, or maybe there was a reason for my desire to touch the fire. Son of the fire, champion of the light, don't be afraid. Fuck it, I know is stupid, but I'm going to try. I thought knowing full well this was a bad idea, but if I didn't I would forever regret not trying it. But I wasn't an idiot. I would not dive into the fire like it was a swimming pool. I would first try with a finger and see. As I dipped my finger in the fire, flinching preemptively, I noticed that I wasn't feeling any pain. Surprised by this I dipped my entire hand and all I felt was warmth, instead of the pain I was expecting. Well, that solves the son of the fire thing. I chuckled as I walked into the fire as if it was the most normal thing. My men started to panic at this. I'm okay, I'm apparently fireproof now. The Blood Riders on the other hand were screaming in pain, the fire burning their skin, scorching them to the other world. As their screams of pain faded into the background, I focused on the eggs, touching them, feeling the warmth inside of them, the spark of life growing. A life for a life, they would hatch by blood and fire. Only after the Blood Riders died, and their screams stopped, the eggs started to crack, the black egg first, the dragon that would have been originally known as Drogo. Crack. Hello, little fella, I said extending my hand to the baby dragon that looked at me curiously, his mind still undeveloped and not sharing much but emotions, he was currently imprinting with me. Soon after his two brothers followed suit, cracking their eggs. By this point, not Drogo was on my shoulder hissing. How about we go and see mommy? I chuckled as I offered my other arm to the other two baby dragons. Asterisk, are our babies okay? Ka asterisk. Asterisk, I told you he would Gordon Ramsay our babies? Ka asterisk. Chapter 49, Chapter 48. 2 months later. Dragons, they are quite spoiled since birth, hissing and demanding attention at all times, be it left or right. I would see them climbing up my legs to demand my absolute attention. Not gonna lie, they were quite adorable, cute little rascals. Daenerys was more than happy to see them and have them. She was beaming with happiness of the highest degree, petting and showering with affections the 3 newborns dragons. She was so excited she had yet to ask, how in the hell did I hatch them? The 3 dragons reacted to Daenerys differently. The 2 smallest ones were shy at first, but after some food and bribes they relented to her affections. Except for not Drogo, he didn't like Daenerys yet. I could feel his emotions flaring when she was near me. In other words, he was jealous. He was post-Shiva to the point of being stupid. Ka, we have located the last big Dothraki tribe, a raven informed as he flew into my lap, getting a hiss from not Drogo. The raven simply responded by literally bitch slapping not Drogo. Asterisk, Ka, don't hiss at me young chick. Asterisk. Chick is how you call a baby raven. Hiss, slap, hiss, slap, hiss, slap, hiss. That continued for about 10 minutes, but in the end my little package of anger decided to give up. Since I hatched these babies, I had almost conquered all the remaining Dothraki tribes since the day I hatched them, and today I would finally get all the Dothraki under my banner, and start on my next item on the agenda, the free cities. But for now, names. What to call these babies? Daenerys wanted to name one like her brother, not Shitstain, Regal. My ravens requested to name the other one, and being that I thought it was hilarious and not really troubling for me I allowed, so they called not Viceroy, Crow with a Q. And with that, all that was left was to name, not Drogo. I pondered with names for a long time, something memorable. Neltharion, yes that was it. Strong and with meaning behind it. Yes it came from a video game but honestly it was awesome. The Dragon of Earth, the bringer of the Cataclysm. Neltharion, I petted the newborn baby dragon, who somehow even with his undeveloped cognitive abilities was happy and felt proud of his name. The last big Dothraki tribe has a little bit above 11,000 riders, compared to my big army composed of 80,000 soldiers made the battle one-sided and predictable. Killing the Khal and his Blood Riders, at this point wasn't even a challenge. I still had other minor tribes to conquer, that together formed around another 20,000 riders but they were scattered around the lands, separated in the few thousands, and for now, what I would have to do. Well, time to move out here, I sighed. Finally I had finished what I started, but I wonder how is Westeros doing. Sansa Stark POV. Father had sent me to Winterfell a few months ago, and I had happily accepted. Joffrey was nothing to what I originally expected from him. He was a little monster, feeding on others' suffering, leeching from the pain and agony around him. I was angry at father. I wasn't sure I hated him, but it was close. I was happy with the prospect of being married to Ronard, but now he had married. And like Ronard said, father once again bent over for Robert. But I wasn't angry enough to want or desire his death. He was still my father. And the last thing I told him before coming was, I hate you. I wanted to fix that. Now, he was arrested, for treason. And there was a big chance I would lose him forever. There was a big chance the last interaction I had with him was that. I'm tired of feeling like this. I teared up in my bed, helpless, useless. Please gods, save my father. Please help my brother. Please I beg you. I cried as I wished with all my heart that the gods blessed and protected my brother's army that was marching south to get father back. Tywin Lannister POV. Ned Stark had been arrested for spouting the things that in nature were nonsensical. My grandson wanted him death. Cersei apparently was the only one that saw the bigger picture this time. She wanted to keep him alive, so did I. We had nothing to hold the North over. Ned Stark while in his idiocy had foreseen somewhat these events, and as so to avoid his daughters being used against him and the North, he sent them back to Winterfell. At least that's what I wanted to believe, but I hardly believe the Honorable Wolf is smart enough to play so far ahead. But regardless of whether he knew or not, he had outplayed us, and if Joffrey killed him, we would have a full-blown war, and nothing to hold them down. and that is why we needed him alive. To keep the north in check. They had already derailed enough, marching south with an army. Like always I had to fix my family's mistakes. I'm going to King's Landing, I announced, leaving my solar, leaving my cousins confused. Ned Stark POV. I was thrown in a dungeon soon after I confronted the Queen for her infidelities. It's been almost 2 months since they threw me here, with nothing but rats to keep me company. Lord Stark, the despicable voice of Varys echoed in the dungeon. What are you doing here? You can't betray more, can't you? I scoffed. I never allied myself to you, Lord Stark. Varys sighed. So what are you doing here? I inquired, annoyed at his presence. Looking to help you, but be aware I'm no hero, Varys replied nonchalantly, with a sigh through the bars of my prison. I scoffed at that. Can you free me from this pit? Varys hummed at that. I could. But will I? No. As I said, I'm no hero. I laughed bitterly at that. What do you want them? How do you pretend to help me? Tell me. No stories, no riddles. Tell me, what do you want? Varys sighed. Peace. Did you know that your son is marching south with an army of Northmen? Loyal lad, fighting for his father's freedom. Robb was marching south, looking for war. Why would he do something so foolish, Robb? He's just a boy. Varys chuckled. Boys have been conquerors before. But the man giving Cersei sleepless nights is the late king's brother. Lord Stannis has the best claim to the throne. He's a proven battle commander and he is utterly without mercy. And of course Lord Ronard with his Dothraki army and dragons, I hear. I scoffed. Stannis Baratheon is Robert's true heir. The throne is his by rights. Ronard might have an army, but he wasn't the heir, not had any right. Varys smiled. You helped the Baratheons rise. You helped Robert sit on the throne when he had no birthright. Don't patronize me with that, Lord Stark. It would be a shame to throw your life away. Cersei is no fool. She knows a tamed wolf has more uses. He was right in one thing. I had helped Robert sit on the throne, but if he thought that of all the persons in the world I would serve that despicable woman, he was out of his marbles. You want me to serve the woman who murdered my king, who butchered my men, who crippled my son? Varys shook his head, with a victorious smile. I want you to serve the realm? Tell the queen you will confess your vile treason. Tell your son to lay down his sword and proclaim Joffrey as the heir, and you will live. I laughed at that. You think my life is some precious thing to me? That I would trade my honor for a few more years of what? You grew up with actors, you learned their craft and you learned it well. But I grew up with soldiers. I learned how to die a long time ago. Varys smiled once again. Pity. Such a pity. Varys moves to leave, but drops a key close to me. I owe the young bear a favor, which was originally intended for your daughters, but you saved them before I could, and while I'm no Lannister, I always pay my debts. Ronard had foreseen so far ahead of this game of schemes, and even after all that happened, he had gone out of his way to ensure the safety of my daughters? Farewell, Lord Stark, farewell. Varys said as he left the dungeon. The guards that were guarding my cell were dead. I was partially free. I owe my life to Ronard. I sighed. Asterisk, yes you do, motherfucker, Khal. Now scram before they fuck you. Asterisk, unbeknownst to him, a raven that for some reason had an eye patch was watching him. Chapter 50. Chapter 49. I had completed step 1 of my complicated mission, and it was time to move forward with the next part of the plan, conquering the free cities. The free cities are 9 powerful cities, each one with their own government and army to protect themselves from invading forces. Not all of them are powerful, but they all are full of riches, mostly because they engage in extensive trade contact with the 7 kingdoms and other lands, and are known for practicing slavery. Unlike the Dothraki, they would prove a bit more challenging to conquer. All I knew about the free cities historically speaking is that they were founded centuries ago as colonies of the Valyrian freehold. But like they say, every empire comes to an end, and when the freehold and its dragon lords were destroyed in the doom of Valyria 400 years ago, and the empire fell, the free cities emerged from the dust as autonomous entities, dominating much of the land between the River Rhoyne and the western coast of the continent. Volantis being the oldest and most populous one, and at one point the most powerful of the free cities, but time had passed and while still formidable, it had been gradually eclipsed by the growing power of Bravus. So now, I had to prioritize my targets and moves accordingly. Bravus, the most powerful and northerly of free cities, led by the Sea Lord. It is home to the influential Iron Bank of Bravus and the secretive assassins guild known as the Faceless Men. And my hardest target, they had enough money to hire an army as big as mine and destroy mine if I played my cards the wrong way, which put this little bitch at the end of my list. Liss was an easy target and the first on my list. It was located on an island in the Summer Sea, which would allow me to use my Krakens to destroy their formidable navy. Myr would be my second target, for how easy it would be to attack it. After all, Myr was a seaport on an arm of the narrow sea close to Liss, which allowed me to also use my Krakens. They were famous for their skilled craftsmen and their products, particularly optical lenses and fine lace. Liss and Myr have been bitter rivals for centuries, perpetually fighting over the disputed lands between them, and I, like a good Samaritan, will end that dispute once and for all. I deserve some praise, don't I? Hiss. Neltharion tilted his head in confusion seeing the map I was using. You will one day burn those who oppose our family. I chuckled, getting a hiss of agreement. Should I be worried? I felt agreement on that hiss. Nah. Tyrosh like Liss was an easy target, an island ready for the taking, and due to its location between the Stepstones, disputed lands, and Westeros, it is a major place for hiring the services of various professional sellsword companies to serve in the various conflicts of these different regions, but in these cases they would get assimilated into my army. Norvos, there was nothing special about them, which put them as my next target on the list, mostly because they were close to the last targets. Pentos, the city where the fat man Illyrio lives, it's a major seaport, land-based, and one of the most vulnerable cities, with no protection against the Dothraki raids. When and how I would conquer it was unknown and really non-important, but conquering it would be a good way to stop Varys and his little plan to support the young Griff. Qohor was among the most interesting targets on my list. It was located in the immense forest of Qohor near the edge of the Dothraki Sea, which was beneficial now that I had my Dothraki with me. It would be easy to attack them, but they were really good on stopping raids and armies. They had their own unsullied army to protect themselves, making them perhaps one of the hardest cities to conquer on my list, but I was really interested in them, for they were known for their immensely skilled blacksmiths, who can even reforge Valyrian steel, something that would come handy for the long night. Hiss, Neltharion was especially interested in Qohor. Yes, you will help Daddy to mass-produce Valyrian steel, I laughed, if that's even possible, of course. Hiss, Neltharion hissed, as he curled up inside my fur jacket to sleep. This will be incredibly creepy once you grow to be several times bigger than me, I chuckled, imagining a fully grown dragon trying to use me as a pillow. With a sigh I continued making my list, getting to the last city, Volantis, the most populous and corrupt city, leading the market on slaves. Like Bravos, they would pose a challenge, but infinitely minor to Bravos, for they did have as much money as them to keep me at bay, and they would be the last to fall. Well, not really the last, for Bravos and Lorith would be the last ones, after Volantis. Liss, Myr, Tyrosh, Norvos, Pentos, Qohor, Volantis, Lorith, Bravos. My list was complete. I would conquer the cities in that order, and then I would get the fucking throne, and of course, I would kill Varys. Cockless bastard. If he thinks I will let him double-cross me, just because he is the fat and bald version of Kent, he is sorely mistaken. Kent from Barbie is a dickless joke, haha, another pun. Well, it seems I'm trapped, I chuckled, realizing that if I moved I would wake up Neltharion, and like a cat you must not do that. I woke up next morning to see Neltharion being fed by the ravens like he was a chick, and surprisingly he wasn't biting their heads off while they regurgitated the meat and corn inside his tiny dragon mouth. Caw, eat so you can be a healthy raven caw, The scene was just precious, which gave me a reason and the time to leave. Neltharion noticed this and ran after me, climbing me like I was a fucking scratch post. Hey, buddy, I'll be back, the ravens will take care of you for a bit, okay? I chuckled, still surprised he was so attached to me. Hiss, Neltharion hissed like he wasn't sure if to believe me or not. I promise, I chuckled, wondering if I would have these weird conversations with him once he was fully grown. After a second of deep consideration, Neltharion relented and went back to the ravens, leaving me with a hiss that translated to, "You better come back." Haha, adorable, I chuckled, leaving the tent. I explained to my generals what was our next step. The Dothraki were more than happy, saying I was a true stallion for deciding to take the world under my hoof. Nice. The Ironborn were also excited, for I was making everybody pay the iron price. Frankly, I should have seen it coming. Daenerys, on the other hand, already knew about my plans, and knew that while I loved her she could not stop me from doing this. While she wanted to conquer Westeros, but she didn't want me to do the same here, for she feared I would lose my life, but she understood my reasons. Aren't we overreaching? Daenerys asked worriedly. We must do this, I reassured her. Ned Stark POV. I still had yet to escape King's Landing. I remembered that Arya told me about the secret passages that she had found while playing around the castle, and thanks to that I had been roaming in them, avoiding getting captured. I had yet to find the right passage that would lead me outside the castle walls, outside this wretched place. I will soon be back home, so wait for me, I sighed. Things might not look good now, but I was certainly better than a couple days ago. There was also another matter at hand. Ioron'd my life, and I had to pay that debt. What are you still doing here, Caw? I swear these motherfuckers keep getting dumber and dumber. The raven that had been following me Caw, like he wanted to tell me something. Chapter 51. Chapter 50. I was prepared for what is to come. Most of the last year I have been spent honing my body and mind while gathering a bigger army to prepare for the challenges ahead. Whether I like it or not, I was the so-called champion of light. The one who will journey beyond the wall and guarantee the safety of my family and humanity of the winter zombie apocalypse, that for reasons yet to be fully disclosed to me, a demon was helping them. With that in mind, I sigh as I enter the training area I had set for my men while we waited for the supplies and ships to travel to Liss, and found Daenerys waiting for me. With a smile, I approach her. She was big, and while she thought and considered she was fat, I only saw her shining more and more every day. How are you three doing? Very funny, Daenerys giggled. Nothing, just waiting for you. I see, I smiled, taking a seat beside her. Soon we will be marching to Liss, and we'll stay there for a bit, at least until the birth. Medicine here was not exactly precise. She was pregnant, and our estimate was that she was around 6 to 7 months, so after conquering Liss, I would take a break, to ensure she had the babies on a controlled environment. The last thing I wanted was to have my babies be born in the middle of a siege. Daenerys shifted in her chair. She wanted to say something. I've been long enough with her to notice these little things. She wanted to talk and was gathering her thoughts. I want to help you more. Elaborate, I asked with my eyebrows raised. She helped me enough, didn't she? I want to talk some of the load you have. Daenerys sighed. You are always going to war, fighting, organizing your men, and all I do is stay and wait for you. I want to help you. We are supposed to be partners. Oh, she wanted more responsibilities. Well, I don't see anything wrong with that. If she saves me the problem of paperwork, I would love her even more. Sure, I do the fighting, you do the talking. That's a start, but now that we have dragons, in the future. Daenerys started, but I stopped her. I knew what she wanted to say. We have dragon, that one day will be rideable, so that way I can help you in battle. Abso-fucking-lutely not. Why? Daenerys asked with a dry tone. An arrow can kill you, or you can fall off them. I know they love you, but that's a chance, and what would our kids do without you? I said, trying to ignite her motherly love to stop this nonsensical idea. And what if you die? Daenerys asked, with cold steel eyes. She was determined to convince me. This was the Dragoness that the books showed. I can't. I said that already. I can't die. And then a fucking shadow was close to show me the error of that arrogant comment. You can't die. Yes, you said that already. Daenerys sighed, putting her small hand on my face. I love you, and I want to protect you. I want to protect our children, our family. I want to protect us. I didn't know what to tell her. No matter how convincing her arguments were, my mind was set. Let's talk about this once they get to flying size. Until then, I don't want to hear about it. For now, I wanted to avoid the subject. Daenerys sighed. I will protect you and our family, whether they want it or not. And for the first time since our marriage, we had come to an impasse. She was determined to do as she pleased with this. A queen takes what she wants, didn't you tell me? Daenerys eyed me, with a pseudo-angry smirk. I did, but you really underestimate my ability to stop you, my queen. I smirked back. Like you, nothing will stop me from protecting you and our family, so I suppose, we'll see? We will, Daenerys nodded, with a piercing glare that said, I won't drop this subject, I will protect you. Very well, I smiled, giving her the same look. Not if I protect you first. This would be a long month, while I waited for my ships, a month of discussions about this. Hooray for married life. Cersei Lannister POV. Ned Stark had escaped the dungeon, right beneath our noses. He had left and no one knew how. He didn't have allies nor visitors in King's Landing, and yet he escaped like he had the fucking key to the door? Varys had his best spies working on the case, but nothing. Lord Stark had disappeared like he was a fucking faceless man. Father was going to kill me once he got here. Without Ned Stark we had nothing to ensure the North staying loyal, and with Stannis raising his fucking banners, and the North would surely support him now. We had no allies now, but it didn't matter. We are the lions, and we preserve against anything, for we are the mightiest ones. My queen, the disgusting voice of the eunuch got my attention. Varys, any news about Lord Stark? I said bitterly. Rumors are he is traveling hiding as a merchant to avoid any suspicion, but considering all the time he has been out of his cell, it is fair to assume he is on enemy lines, Varys stated, once again the obvious. Any news about when father is coming? I wanted to break my cup of wine and cut his fat neck. He was supposed to know more, to help more. Why did we even pay him? He is to arrive in a fortnight, my queen, Varys informed. I had 2 weeks before I was belittled by father for letting the wolf escape the lion's den. Very well, I sighed as I filled my cup of wine. Keep me updated, and do your job better. Joffrey Baratheon POV. The insolent worm, the worm with wolf fur had escaped. This can't be, this can't be. My fiancé had escaped before too. My toy had escaped, and now my other toy had escaped. Toy, unforgivable, unforgivable. Now my uncle wanted to oppose me. I was chosen by the gods, unforgivable, and that peasant that thinks he can be king because he married the dragon bitch, unacceptably. My king, are you okay? One of my king's guard inquired, worried. For what? Why would someone so much lower than me feel anything but total admiration and devotion for me? I want Ned Stark in my hands, and I want him now. I shouted. My face was red, boiling in anger. We are doing our best to find him, my king's guard said solemnly. I didn't want his best, I wanted my toys back. I don't want your efforts. I want the Starks at my feet, as they bleed out. I spat, leaving the room, or I'll have your head, old man. *Caw. This motherfucker is crazy. How many times that bitch dropped his egg? She practically brooded a scrambled egg. I rather deal with the other idiot. This bitch is unstable as fuck. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Unbeknownst to everyone, a mysterious raven with an eye patch was seeing everything with his one mighty eye, as he decided it was better to continue helping Lord Stark, instead of spying this bitch. Ned Stark POV. It had taken me a while, but I managed to get out of that wretched place, but I had to avoid getting caught or recognized, so I cut my hair off and changed my clothes with those of a beggar I found. At the moment, I was traveling with a merchant to Riverrun. From there things would turn for the best. I would finally be back with my family. Wait for me, I muttered to myself, holding the hope I would be once again reunited with my family. Catelyn Stark POV. Ned had escaped, and now it was a mission of who caught him first, life or death depending on who did it. War was looming above us, no matter what, even if Ned didn't want to, and to top the things that were happening, the bear had proven to be a treacherous creature, betraying us by marrying the Targaryen girl, raising his banners to take the throne. He was a threat. I always knew something about him wasn't right. He made his house close relationships with ours, and by killing Theon and taking control of his homeland, which meant we didn't have the support of the Iron Islands, nor the Bear Islands, things we would have without him. Justice will prevail, and those who wrong us will pay. I had faith things would turn in our favor soon. Chapter 52. Chapter 51. 2 weeks later. My campsite is fairly simple at the moment, looking like a copy of the shit show of V's Dothrak. My tent is cozy enough for me, Daenerys and 3 baby dragons, that sleep by the fire. For now all I have to do is wait. My ships will arrive soon and things will fall into place. But only having to wait doesn't mean I have to do just that. It's light outside, a good time to explore and relax for a bit. Time to explore a bit. I smiled as I walked out of my tent, being brutally stopped by Neltharion, who hissed at me, practically saying, "You are going out without me." Not a chance, you are quite the clingy dragon, are you? I chuckled as I allowed the little dragon to climb up my back. Hiss, Neltharion hissed happily, once he reached my neck and got in a comfortable position. I really hope you don't get like big dogs that never understand their size. I shuddered to think what would happen if Neltharion tried the same thing but being several tons fatter. Hiss, Neltharion hissed in confusion, not really understanding me. Well, let's go. I sighed as I walk out the tent, not before leaving a note to Daenerys, saying I'll be back by dinner. I need to stretch my legs. Love you? As I happily step away from my campsite, alert and scanning the ground and sky for danger, with Neltharion doing the same. I walked for the better part of an hour, being sure to have fun along the way. But my mind even here still drifted off to my duties as a leader and a husband. It worries me that Daenerys is so close to giving birth, and there is a chance something might happen to her during the birth. She never gave birth in the show, so I had nothing to compare what was going to happen soon, and it was totally terrifying. Neltharion starts to purr, almost like a cat, like reassuring me nothing bad will happen, but the idea still sets me off. You are right, buddy. I need to stay positive. I chuckled as I continued with my little time off adventure. Euron Greyjoy POV. The Iron Islands had been taken by House Mormont. That was unexpected to say the least. For what I could gather, he had a massive army, and had amassed a lot of money. Taking what is mine would take more than I would like to admit. And rumors about him going to Essos, and conquering the Dothraki were spiraling like crazy. So while I wanted to kill the bastard, I had to bide my time, and find allies to destroy him. Maybe ally with the Lannisters, whoever wanted him dead would work just fine. I could offer the Queen, my cock, and the navy she desires, in that exact order. He mocks the drowned god, calling himself the chosen one, but I don't recall choosing him. I am the drowned god. From Old Town to Karth, when men see my sails, they pray, and he will pray. Back to Ronard. After a couple of hours hunting and chilling in the plains, I decided it was time to go back to my campsite. It was a great day. Neltharion seemed to really enjoy the hunting experience, even though he had no power to actually hunt. Yet. But regardless, he had helped, or at least he thought he had, by hissing at the numerous prey we encountered. How about we take this, so they can cook it for us? I inquired, petting Neltharion softly on his head. Hiss, Neltharion hissed in something that could be translated as, "Fuck yeah." Very well, I chuckled, taking the food we had gathered and putting it on my back, making Neltharion shift his position to fit better. As I walked back to the camp, I pondered how I would feel with the crown in my head. Would I feel any different from now, or would it feel the same? Threats would certainly be better contained, and I would have more freedom to live. One thing was for sure, I wanted to melt that throne. That shit had only shattered this world, and besides, it looked mighty uncomfortable. As I was deep in thought, the sound of hooves approaching snapped me out of my long reverie. "Michael, you left without us," my blood rider said, somewhat insulted. "They were supposed to be my shadows, and I left them behind. I was hunting, wanted some time alone." I eyed him with a glare that said, "I appreciate the gesture but fuck off, but now that you are here, take this back to the camp, it will be my dinner." "Yes, our dinner," I added. My blood riders nodded, as they took the prey I was carrying on my back, giving a horse to ride back. I got back to the campsite where one of my ravens was waiting for me with a message from my navy. They apparently were going to arrive earlier than I anticipated, in just 1 week's time. With worked for best considering I wanted to take control of Liss before Daenerys got to the birth part. "How was your little adventure?" Daenerys inquired, entering the war tent. "It was fine. Neltharion really enjoyed the trip, more so than me." I smiled, seeing the baby dragon sleeping on my desk. "He seems really attached to you." Daenerys giggled. "Maybe is a sign you'll be a great dad." "I sure hope so, because mine suck, both in this and my past life." "We are not our fathers," Daenerys smiled soothingly. "I'm not mad, and you're not an idiot." "I guess," I smiled. "Any news?" Daenerys inquired. "Our navy will arrive in a week," I informed her. I had yet to ask my ravens for the status report of what was happening in Westeros. "Liss, I heard the call at the City of Pleasure." Daenerys smiled. "Seems appropriate to have our kids there. Not as appropriate to have them in our home, but this will do." "Soon," I reassured. "Soon that crown would be in our heads." "Soon," Daenerys sighed happily. After getting the update to what was going on in Westeros, I was a tad surprised. It seems I had saved Ned Stark from his imminent demise. Lord Varys had delivered what he was asked to. In a different way, I didn't make a deal for Lord Stark, but for his daughters, and because they didn't need to be saved, Varys simply filled that debt with the next best thing, their father. Clever little man. He either has an inkling I'm mad at him and because of that he is trying to buy me over, or he is just being extra careful to not owe me anything. Poor little man, only death awaits him. He put my children on the line, and that was unforgivable. And, to add to my list of idiots, there was Caitlin Stark. She was already on the list, but got to the top 10 really fast, saying I will feel the retribution of House Stark. Quite the big words for someone with zero power. I can't wait to see her kneeling in my name. I chuckled, imagining how much she would suffer kneeling to someone she once was more powerful. Cersei Lannister POV. Father had arrived, and like I predicted he wasn't happy at all. You let our only bargaining chip slip between your fingers. Father growled, smashing his fist on the table, fissuring the wood just a bit. I didn't allow anything. Someone helped him, someone inside our ranks, I informed him, trying to keep my mind cool, because no matter how powerful I felt, I still feared Father, the most powerful man in Westeros. I didn't get one single competent child. One is an idiot, the other a monster, and you think you are smart, but you are nothing, Father growled. I am the queen. I was a queen. How dare he? I was still the queen of nothing. Father slapped me. We have no allies, no bargaining chips. We have nothing. All we have is my army and my money. So you'll do what I say if you want to win. Am I clear? Crystal, I muttered, feeling my face burning with pain and anger, but he was right. Without him, we have no chance. Good, and please control the mad dog you have as a child, before I do it, Father added, and you know full well how I do stuff. I gulped. Yes, Father, as I nodded between gritted teeth. Chapter 53, Chapter 52. I wrenched my eyes wide open. The sound of my ravens waking me up. It probably was time to the coast, for when my ships arrived, I stared for a second at the black-colored ceiling of my tent, really wishing I could sleep a few more seconds, but sadly I have kingly duties to attend to. Well, time to see the sore losers. Yesterday I had a drinking contest with my men, and I had drunk enough alcohol to kill 2 elephants, but because my body metabolism is so efficient in processing toxins and other stuff, my body rendered alcohol useless. I do get tipsy though, but it takes a while. With a smile, I jumped off the bed, making sure Daenerys was sleeping soundly, and everyone but Neltharion stayed sleeping, for he notices that I'm leaving and climbs up to my shoulder, looking at me like I was about to betray him and leave. Let's go, buddy. I chuckled while I petted the little dragon on my shoulder as I walked out. Outside, I could see my man walking by, eating and drinking, but I wasn't here to admire their basic routines, so with a deep breath of annoyance, mostly because the sunlight was hurting me, for not sleeping enough, I started to walk up to my raven. Ka, the ships are arriving at Pentos in 10 days, we have to move. Ka, my raven informed me as soon as I was in front of him. It was time to start marching, but there was a chance Bravos would see an army that big marching towards Pentos as a threat and attack me preemptively. To avoid ruining my plan I would have to separate my army to show them I was no threat to them, leaving a part with my wife, at least while I got my ships, the ones coming and the ones I had left on the coast with Viserys. Talking about Viserys, I wonder how is the little waste of cum is doing. I do hope he is wishing to die at this point. Viserys Targaryen POV. Total and absolute disgrace. I had been forced into the most deplorable situation, but the day of my retribution would come. I would kill that bastard for what he had done. He would pay. I knew sooner or later my allies would break me free, the sames that Illyrio said that had secret toasts on my name. They were soon to rescue me. I knew I could feel it. I was their rightful king, and they loved me. It was simply a matter of time, to bring that treacherous snake down, and take what is mine, what belongs to me, my sister and my throne. Back to Ronard POV. My army was composed of 80,000 men or so, but to get my ship I would travel back with only 5,000 men, right about the same amount I had before starting with gathering the Dothraki. It has been quite a while since I last saw Illyrio. I wonder if he still fears me. I suppose there is only one way to find out if he still does. You are in charge of everyone here. I had informed all my men, that while I was gone her words were the law. Poor those who disobey their queen. Daenerys giggled. I'll be fine, be safe. I will. I nodded, giving her a goodbye kiss. She would be safe. She had an army few could even hope to match, and a pair of baby dragons ready to bite for her. Neltharion was coming with me. He didn't care for reason. He really imprinted in me, in a cute but obsessive way. It would take me a couple weeks to reach Pentos, if we didn't encounter any problems, but considering I outnumbered any of the remaining Dothraki tribes, I was good if anyone wanted to raid me. In fact, I welcomed it. That way they would save me the time to go out and look for them. Quite the trouble. Let's go, I ordered as we marched to Pentos. Ned Stark POV. It has been quite a while since I escaped out of King's Landing thanks to Ronard. So far my merchant caravan had been moving slowly, but I was safe. After all, no one suspected the helper that was working with them, unloading the boxes and items, was actually the lord everyone was looking for. Almost 3 weeks of traveling, where I was on constant paranoia I would be captured, or something would happen. 3 weeks where I had to be completely alert, but after all that, I was finally here at Riverrun, the ancestral seat of House Tully. I could feel a smile forming on my face as I saw the castle as we descended. A few more miles and I would be reunited with my family, freedom within my grasp. I had to give something to these merchants. They helped me, even though they didn't have to. They know I had risked their lives for this very moment of peace and tranquility. I'm coming home, I muttered with an uncontrollable smile on my face. This moment of happiness would end quite fast. The moment I arrived, I would be dragged into this war of schemes and backstabbing I have so desperately tried to avoid. I would have to support Stannis on his claim. He was the rightful heir, and yet I owe Ronard my life. I was bound by honor to Stannis, and by gratitude to Ronard. What can I do? Robb Stark. Father had escaped a while ago and we had yet to find him. With him the North would be whole again, our family would be whole again. I have tried to be strong, to show I have no fear and will bring the justice the North deserves, but I was afraid I would lose everyone I loved in this war. Stannis wanted us to bend the knee, but I had agreed with the lords to wait for Father's answers, as he was the one who spoke for the North as a whole. But Stannis and the Lannisters aren't our only threat. Ronard was a pretty prominent one, that was more and more dangerous every day. He's been increasing his army and resources at an alarming speed. Rumors say he already has an army big enough to take on the North and all its banners. He didn't even take his time to get a new fiancée. He was a power-hungry man that needed to be taken down, quoting Mother, and maybe she was right. He killed Theon like a dog, brutally punching him to the death, so maybe Mother was right. Maybe he was a monster, one that I would have to take care of. That's what I would want to say, but I've seen him fight. I know I can't best him in combat, but with Grey Wind, he stands no chance. No man is stronger than a dire wolf. Friend or foe, if you take a wrong step, I will end you. I sighed, for I was a wolf that would go to hell and back to protect his pack. HRMMM, an idiot he is, if and then wolf depending he is. YRRSSSS unbeknownst to him, a very wise raven with a Jedi cape was watching him carefully. Joffrey Baratheon POV. Nothing, no results, nothing. How could they be so insolent to disobey their king? I said I wanted Lord Stark, and he is not here. They deserve to pay for this. Yes, they do. They have broken a royal order, and life is the only payment I will accept. Their pain will clean them. I want all my royal guard dead, for their incompetence, I said with a wide smile. I knew grandfather would support me. He understood how to rule correctly. You won't do such a thing. Tywin sighed. Who the hell he thinks he is to deny a king of his wish? That was an order. I shouted, anger boiling in my core, as I gritted my teeth, but I was soon enough greeted by a slap. You'll do well to remember who is keeping you on that throne, boy, Tywin said. His cold eyes and demeanor were more frightening. I was a king. He can't do this. You can't. I was about to complain, but a glare from Tywin was more than enough to shut me up. I can and I will. Behave like a king and I will follow. Until then, sit and let me keep you in the throne. Am I clear? Tywin asked with a condescending tone. With Ronard on our back and Stannis on our front, we need every able man. We can't throw resources we don't have, just because you want to. Not now. Ronard, that coward. If he was such a threat, he would be here feeling the taste of my blade. Ronard is no threat. Once the time comes, I will cut his head, and show him the power of a true king, maybe with a duel. He is a threat, even bigger than Stannis, and his brother. He's been playing the game without losing so far, more than we can say, certainly better than you, so don't think for a second that pretty crown in your head will shrink the massive gap in skill between you and him, and always remember, kings can always fall, Tywin said with a cold tone. He really thought that bastard was better than me, that he could best me in anything? Unacceptable. I was superior to Ronard in every way. I am better. I was about to rebut this ludicrous statement, but grandfather stopped me. I have a kingdom to keep under you, so shut up and let me, Tywin said as he left the throne room, not before adding, I don't have time to waste, especially not with your tantrums. Chapter 54, Chapter 53 Olenna Tyrell POV. War, men were such predictable creatures, fighting for power, money, and women, but I had to be fair. Some fought for other men, like Renly was fighting because of the soft whispers of my grandson. What a foolish little boy, and what's even more foolish is Mace, that thinks the poor lad will win the throne and make Margaery his queen. Even if he won this war, which was hardly unlikely, he would most likely put Loras as his queen. The thought of it really puts on a new perspective, but it won't get to that. Renly is all talk, but little show. Yet here we are too deep into the gutter to escape it now. We must see it through. Every time Mace makes a decision by himself, consequences of catastrophic magnitudes follow through. In this family only the roses have thorns, and men are no roses. Mace was too dumb to see we had bigger problems, that it was best if we didn't get into this war so early on. But men rarely do see things outside their narrow point of view. Ronard Mormont, he was a better candidate to ally ourselves with. After taking care of his wife, he would be free to marry Margaery. Accidents happen after all, and while he came from a small house, the lad was terrifying in many aspects. Economically and in war potential, he was the best of his generation, by far. Rumors say he has an army of over 80,000 soldiers, he himself has conquered, and other most unbelievable rumors say he has 3 dragons. If everything they said was correct, he was the one we needed on our side. Frankly, things like this just reassure my point. Men should not rule. I sighed. Jon Snow POV. War had started, my family was in danger, father was missing, so many things, but I was held by blood and honor to the Night Watch. But if I had known this would happen, I would have stayed with them. I would have my sword ready to fight for Robb. Father taught me honor comes before anything, before family, before love. The least a bastard like me could do was honor his teachings, and hope everything goes well. Lord Snow, move your ass, we need you. My commander in charge shouted. Yes, sir. Ned Stark POV. I was finally within friends and family. Hoster Tully and his son Edmure Tully recognized me. I didn't even have to prove it was me. After a long talk about how I managed to escape, and my journey, they left me to rest for a bit, to recover myself from all this. They of course had sent a raven to inform my family of my current whereabouts. It would take a couple of days for us to hear back from them, but soon they would know I was safe and sound here. Hoster was surprised to say the least when he heard Ronard had been the one to save me from the imminent death that awaited me. Honor, gratitude, without Ronard I would be dead, but if I went back on my honor, things are never easy on war. I would have to end up betraying someone, and in both paths I would lose something. Lord Stark, supper is ready, a maid said entering the room I was given. I'll be there in a few, I nodded. Ronard Mormont POV. After leaving my wife 2 weeks ago, with an army to protect her should anything arise that would threaten her safety, I started to make my way to Pentos. By now I could see the city from afar. If I had to take an estimate, I would say I was a few hours away from it. A few hours away from my men and ships. With that in mind, I speed up our pace, so as to make sure we didn't waste any time. On this march, we weren't here for tourism anyway. The last time I was in this city I left with nothing but my self-proclaimed title of kingship, and now, I had come back with a new title, the king of the Dothraki tribes, the Great Khal, the Great Stallion. That last one was a tad weird coming from the mouth of a man. Regardless, I was someone of greater importance. Bravos must consider me a threat regardless of what I do, but they were overconfident. After all, no one would dare to oppose them. They had more money than the Seven Kingdoms, and the entirety of Essos together, which was a statement of how powerful they were economically speaking. After all, they had the Iron Bank on their side. And it is the wealthiest bank of the known world that is known because it often lends money to outsiders, such as the Lords of the Seven Kingdoms. The bank is also famous for its discretion and secrecy. No one knows where they are truly located, and or where they save their money. They are also feared. Even the Lannisters fear opposing them, for a common saying among the Bravasi is the Iron Bank will have its due. If someone happened to fail payment, the Iron Bank would sponsor someone to take their enemies down. But, unlike others, I would succeed in taking every penny they had. I had my ravens investigating where the bank was truly located and where the money was stored. I expected to know the answer by the moment it was time to march against them. Let's go, we have some ships to move, I shouted in a happy tone. Arya Stark POV. Of life of death, I feared my father would not come back. I feared I would lose my family to those bastards ruling, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. A lady can do and be anything she pleases, a housewife or a trained killer. Whatever you do, it makes it ladylike. Don't let narrow-minded individuals to tell you otherwise, for their minds are weak, and we don't follow the weak. The voice of Ronard, that time we spent together during his betrothal ceremony, echoed in my head. He was right. I might not be able to do anything now, but I will soon. If I keep training and honing my water dancing skills, I will be able to help my family, to save my friends and to kill my enemies. Too bad Sansa couldn't marry him. He was a decent guy. Mother keeps saying he is our enemy, but I don't believe it. Like always, Mother must be wrong. He would never hurt us. Not without a reason. Varys POV. Lord Stark had finally gotten out of the lion's den. He was finally with his family, albeit politically. Nonetheless, he was immensely more safe that he could have been here. I wonder, will he support the young bear or the old stag? I did put him on an inner conundrum when I revealed why I was helping him. I wanted to see his resolve. Would his honor to Robert bound him to Stannis, or would his gratitude to Ronard push him to forsake his misplaced honor? Things would surely prove more difficult for the wolf, whatever his choice was. With Ronard on the Targaryen side, Aegon was sure to take up the throne eventually, and if Ronard did not compel, he had already put babies inside Daenerys. He wasn't needed anymore should he prove to be against the rightful ruler. Though this was easier said than done, he was the most informed me in the world, possibly even more than me, so if I had to take a guess, it was most likely he already knew of my true intentions. If so, I had to play safe or I would wake up dead. I had to throw him off his game. Whether he was a friend or a foe to Aegon, it was still to be seen. He keeps getting more and more dangerous. Daenerys POV. Ronard had left almost 2 weeks ago, to gather our ships, so we could start our conquest, and eventually take what's rightfully mine, rightfully ours. At this point, surprises were a common occurrence with him. He united a tribe of savages under one banner, our banner. He brought creatures thought to extinct back to life, and had become one of the greatest warriors of this generation, all in the span of 16 years. He had accomplished so more, including winning my undying love, so this chance he had given me, to lead his army on his absence, this chance, I would prove him I was more than a decorative queen, that I too could make our enemies tremble with our mere name, that I could protect him just as he protected me. Crow and Regal were key parts of that, for when the time came, I would ride them into battle and burn our enemies. I would not let anyone hurt my family. Not again. For I was the Dragon Queen. Chapter 55. Chapter 54. Illyrio welcomed me to Pentos with open arms and fearful eyes. Just as I expected, he still remembered our little personal chat. To some degree, I knew he was still double playing, but for now he would be allowed to live. He still had some use. My sources have gathered that Aegon is gathering allies, but struggling to keep up with me. All he had for the moment was Jon Connington, Varys and Illyrio on his side. His location was still unknown for me, as all the information I had gathered about him came from Varys and Illyrio during their secret exchanges, and both had been very careful not to say where he was, even during their little chats. Perhaps Varys was catching on with me, or they were really secretive to keep the so-called rightful king safe. I had no hard feelings for Aegon. In fact, I would give the option to just surrender and take Dragonstone, and keep the Targaryen bloodline, but I knew he would not take that offer. After all, any man with a possible claim for power would fight to the death to claim it. He would fight me even if he knew it was a lost cause. But in the end, wasting time thinking of him was utterly pointless. He was the least of my concerns, a man without an army. Though I had to admit his existence puzzled me, before I discovered how deep Varys' plots reached and heard of him, I had completely ignored his existence. I remember vaguely reading about him in the second book, and how they couldn't really confirm he was who he said he was. I suppose burning him would prove if his dragon heritage was what he said it was and solve the mystery. I have provided your men with all the things you requested, Illyrio smiled, bringing back to the real world outside my head. Oh, as diligent as ever, I nodded. Food and medical supplies were two of the few things I really needed to ensure my army stayed healthy and powerful. Ignoring Illyrio the rest of the way, I walked to the Bay of Pentos with my army behind. My blood riders were glaring at anyone that even dared to look at me, but while the thought of them being protective was nice and all, in reality this was how Dothraki acted to strangers. Neltharion was undercover inside my fur jacket, sleeping soundly around my covered neck. I was waiting for the perfect moment to show him off to Illyrio and see his expression of suffering when he realizes the dragon eggs he sold me hatched. It would be fantastic to experience his dismay. What can I say? I have no sympathy for the Magister. For the king. A man shouted, jumping from behind trying to stab me with a knife dripping something. I didn't have to be a genius to know it was poison. Everything around me slowed down as I smiled. It has been quite a while since I had such a blatant assassination attempt, but before I can even reach my blade and kill the poor man that was highly misinformed of how hard this would be, my blood rider cut his head with his arak. Such a weak man does not deserve to stain the blade of Arkell, my blood rider said, spitting on the corpse of the assassin. I smiled at him. While I wanted to deal with the attempt myself, it was also nice to see I had competent men under my banner. Amazing work, with an impressive clean cut. I smiled as I looked at Illyrio, who at this point was sweating his own weight per second. Did he have something to do with this? Hardly. Varys would stage something with more brain behind it. This was not Varys' craft, ergo Illyrio had nothing to do with this, but he thought I thought he had, so fear was filling his very core. It's all right, Illyrio, I smiled, deciding to mess with him another time. The assassin is death, no need to be afraid. With that I returned with my walk, leaving the corpse of the assassin to rot in the market as I continued to ignore Illyrio, as I chuckled inwardly at his earlier reaction. Tyrion Lannister POV. The throne seemed to be 50% off, with everyone going for it. It was all I could think of. Stannis Baratheon, Renly Baratheon, Ronard Mormont, all that was left was for the whores to try and claim the throne. We had so many enemies that if father somehow pulled the wind out of his gold-shitting ass it would surprise me, but in all fairness, if someone could do impossible things through questionable means was father. The house still eluded me though, but for some reason father wanted me to be the new master of coin, discarding Peter Baelish of his positions. Quoting father, the man was as trusty as knife through the heart and he was needed elsewhere, outside where he could not damage more the throne. And because of that, I was solving unsolvable economical problems that really put into perspective who the hell chooses the people in this small council. Oh yeah, the last king. I suppose that answers a lot. We were in debt with the Iron Bank by an absurdly large amount, and with our enemies on the other side of the sea, we were most likely to pay our dues by their sword. After all, the Iron Bank was famous for financing the enemies of those who have not paid them. And we have not paid them. But things were starting to improve a bit. Euron Greyjoy had come to talk to me, well, my father, about an alliance. He wanted in exchange of his help that we helped him take the Iron Islands. And here I was sealing our alliance. We needed all the allies we could gather. So do we have a deal, imp? Euron smiled, stretching up his hand. We do, I smiled, taking his hand. Euron Greyjoy POV. Making a deal with the Lannisters to take back what is mine and more was something I decided on the go. If things went bad for the Lannisters I would just bail out and leave them hanging, so it was a win-win for me. Nothing to lose, much to gain. Just how I like it. And if I get to fuck the queen along the way, that would be just a bonus, the cherry on the top. But then again, how many queens were there? I had a lot to fuck. Cersei Lannister, Margaery Tyrell and, of course, the rare delicacy of Daenerys Targaryen. Maybe after all of this ends and their respective men or protector are dead, I can show them a cock worthy of a crown, my own whorehouse with nothing but queens. I like the sound of that. I wonder if the little dragoness will like the taste of a kraken better. I smiled, as I imagined her little white-colored head between my legs choking on my cock. Well, if she doesn't I can always dip my cock on his blood so she can taste her husband in me. Unbeknownst to him, a raven with an eye patch and a black leather robe was watching him, and listening to his suicidal talk. Asterisk, this motherfucker be dead and he doesn't even know it. Stannis Baratheon POV. Melisandre said I was the chosen one, the one that would bring the realm together, and yet all I had was opposition. The North had yet to allied with me, my own foolish brother was rising against me, and the rising minor lord of the Bear Islands was also going for the throne. But my Red Witch was right, there were fakes, betrayers. The God of Light had assured me that the throne would be mine, and that they were nothing but shadows I had to cast away to prove I was worthy of his blessing. And I was, because I was the rightful king of the 7 kingdoms and I would have my throne, for I was the prince that was promised. Victory was written in my destiny. The fire had spoken of my victory before. Nothing will stop me, I stated as a matter of fact. Nothing will, my king. Melisandre nodded in approval. The fire has shown me of your victory. All those fakes will fall to your mighty feet. Chapter 56, Chapter 55. The sound of one of my men knocking at my door woke me up. It probably meant 2 things, either we were close or someone was stupid enough to attack us in the sea. So with curiosity I hastily dressed up as I scrambled over to the deck to confirm which one was it. Happy for either of the 2. My king, we are 2 hours away from the coast close to Liss, the captain of my ship stated, pointing with his finger to the map in front of him. Very well, I nodded. It seemed one of my suspicions was right, and I would be reunited with Daenerys soon. It has been almost a month since I last saw her. She must have that beautiful baby bum bigger than when I left her. My first priority was getting a base in Essos, and Liss would suffice for many purposes. It was on the sea, so it was easily protectable, and it was located close to the Pentos, so travel would be a breeze. But the one reason that moved me to get this city as fast as I could was that I didn't really know how much time Daenerys would need to recover. After childbirth, she would be having twins and the medical state of this world was quite lacking, but I would give her all the time she needed on a protected environment. And Liss was the perfect place for that. A mercantile city, built on a very fertile island that was very good for agriculture and that at one point was considered a tropical paradise by old Valyrian dragon lords. This beautiful sunny island would serve as the safe haven I was looking for my wife and kid. Quite poetic that one of the latest dragon ladies is coming back to the island. But things were easier said than done, and conquering may or may not present its challenges. My ravens had said Liss is protected by high walls and hired sell swords, both navy and land. The navy would be a piece of cake to destroy, but I had yet to see if their army would prove a bigger challenge. After all, numbers don't always win wars. But I would find a way. Victory would be mine, one way or another. But in many aspects it was the right choice. Conquering Liss would make me infinitely richer than I was before. Because, politically speaking, the city was dominated by wealth rather than by birth, so in short, there were no lords, just rich merchants with tons of gold begging to be mine. Apparently, Liss is a place where trade is considered a profession more honorable than being a knight. But that wasn't all the city was known for. They were renowned in the world for their pleasure gardens and temples dedicated to pleasure, that are said to have the best whores in the known world. I already knew where my men would spend their gold after the conquer. Let me know once the land is in sight, I told my men, leaving to my quarters inside the ship. As I walked to my room I pondered about how Viserys would react to the dragons, and everything. He was still alive, I had yet to see him, but he was on one of the ships, still in his cell, eating whatever my men decide to give him. I wonder if Daenerys will kill him, I chuckled. Daenerys Targaryen POV. I had moved the army to the coast, where we would set camp while we waited for Ronard to arrive with the ships. Rhaegal and Crow had been anxious since Ronard wasn't close, they really missed their dad, he was the one that hatched them. I was starting to actually feel the pregnancy affecting me. My baby bum oven, as Ronard calls it, had grown a lot these past few days. The twins had decided to expand their poor mother and see how bendy her skin and belly were. But even with all this I can't help but love my little chimeras, as Ronard calls them. Half bears, half dragons. Whatever they would be, it would be unique and awesome, I just knew it. My Khaleesi, Ronard's father Jorah Mormont, entered my tent, kneeling, not daring to look at my eyes. Ronard had left quite the impression on him, as he should. We can't forgive those who wrong us, but we can make them pay. What do you want? I questioned the disgusting leech, coldly. I want to redeem myself, for what I did in the past. Jorah took a deep breath. I want to offer my blade to be your knight. I want to be your shield should your life ever need one. I want to be of some use to my grandchildren. His grandchildren? He lost that right and privilege the moment they left my husband alone, in a broken kingdom where anarchy and betrayal rule and the only way to survive is being the bigger monster. Your life is where is needed, so don't think so highly of yourself, I said while Rhaegar and Crow hissed at him as if agreeing with me. You are but a stain on my husband's history and stains can be removed, so do use that brain of yours and remind your place. By this point, ravens has entered my tent, many of them, all glaring at Jorah, as if awaiting my command to attack. Next time you disobey your king's orders, and come and talk to me, I will deliver my husband your head on a silver platter. Is that clear? Crystal my queen. Ned Stark POV. My family was on their way to pick me up. Well, Cat was, my son was holding the army together, and my daughters were in Winterfell alongside Bran and Rickon, safe and protected as they should be. I couldn't wait to hold my son and hug him, I couldn't wait to kiss my wife, and most of all, I couldn't wait to go back to Winterfell and never come back south again. Cat was right, Starks don't do well in the south. The memories of our walks together seemed so far from reality. I wasn't ready to die and leave my family behind. Lord Stark, Hoster Tully said, snapping me back to the waking world. The man was making an effort not to look weak. He was deadly sick and bedridden for the most part, but wanted to die like a man, on his feet. I know it's not ice, but you will need a new sword, he said as servant handed me a fine long sword. It's not Valyrian steel but is good enough. The sword was a masterpiece. It could be seen that it was magnificently crafted by a highly skilled blacksmith. It was not as unique as ice, but it would certainly do the trick when in battle. Whoever made this was very good. You didn't have to do this, I smiled, admiring the blade. Use it until you get your blade back, Hoster chuckled. That I will, I nodded. Ice would come back to our family, one way or the other. Caitlin Stark POV. Ned was alive and was staying with my father in Riverrun. The gods were smiling at me, they had heard my prayers and helped my husband. Ned said it was thanks to Ronard that he escaped, that by his hand he was able to survive. But I could see beyond that. Ronard was trying to manipulate Ned into servitude. I wasn't going to let him. That treacherous rat would not take advantage of Ned anymore. Stannis would make sure of it, once Ned pledged his loyalty to him. Let's see how well you do, little bear, I smiled triumphantly. No matter what he was planning, I would always be one step ahead of him. For my family, I would stop him. Okay, this bitch is dumb. Her IQ must be negative. This motherfucker needs some books and corn. Somebody help this bitch increase her brain power. Unbeknownst to her, a raven with an eye patch and a black robe was trying hard to calculate her IQ. Robb Stark POV. Father was safe, and the one responsible for it was Ronard. Had he foreseen this, just how far ahead he had seen this game played out? Like mother said, he was dangerous, but after this, I doubted he was for us. He had rescued father knowing full well that father would most likely support Stannis. He had done something for us, we as a whole would never be able to repay. He had united our family, our pack. But mother was paranoid, saying he was trying to manipulate us, to use us. At this point, I was almost sure her ideas and opinions of him were biased on her one-sided hate she had for him. Because I refuse to believe now that he is our enemy and hates us. He had done what I couldn't. I wonder why mother hates him so much, I sighed. At first I thought it was for what he did to Theon, but she never liked him, at least not that much to warrant such profound hate. Chapter 57, Chapter 56. Daenerys, as I expected, was at the coast, waiting with the army to enter the ship. She was a tad bigger, her belly ever growing. With a simple glance, I could tell I had a month or two before she was due, so I had to control that fucking island before that happened. We are sailing to Liss tomorrow, right? Daenerys inquired, sitting on a lounge silver coach I had bought. They said it was super comfortable. Yes, I nodded, as I smiled seeing how dashing she looked. Daenerys smiled for a moment as she touched her belly, as she gazed into my eyes. We will win, I feel it. Was there ever any doubt? I smirked at her with a hint of overconfidence. No, there wasn't, Daenerys giggled. Viserys is here, you know, I sighed, not really knowing what to do with him. Setting him free was not an option, and death was something I wanted Daenerys to choose for him. Daenerys looked at me for a second as if contemplating what to do with her brother. She now had an even bigger reason to deal with him. There is no love like motherly love. If something can move mountains is that unyielding love a mother feels for her children. Not all of them feel this, but Daenerys was that type of woman. So all Viserys had to do was say the wrong words and he would be dead. I'll deal with him later, Daenerys said with a cold tone, with emotionless eyes, giving me all the information I needed. She had no feelings for him at all anymore. She didn't feel powerless. She knew she was the dragon and he was a fake. Do whatever you want, but don't set him free. He steps out of his prison and stays alive, and I'll personally have him skinned. While I trusted she would not, so that I had to let her know my thoughts on the matter. I had stationed various snakes around and ravens should he try and flee. They would kill him in a matter of seconds. Daenerys actually smiled at that. I would never. He plotted to have you killed and wanted to sell me as a common whore. He would spend the rest of his days in prison, or maybe if I feel generous I will kill him. Damn, since when she becomes so cold-blooded and badass, she is so warm and girly with me, but the moment we talk about anything else she goes full Maleficent. I am both intrigued and aroused by this behavior. My queen is breathing fire. I smiled. Daenerys stood up and grabbed my hands, putting one on her belly, and the other in my heart. I have things I would gladly die for now. You and my babies are the only ones I care. For what I care, the world can burn. I agree, I smiled, giving her a soft peck on the lips. Do you think they know? Daenerys inquired after our kiss, making me smile. They did know. Someone had deduced my intentions and wanted to fuck with them, but once again, they used the now most unreliable method of communication, ravens, and I knew that their Magister was preparing for me. They do, but as changes nothing. If a hanged man knows he is going to be hanged, changes nothing. Next day, after setting the security detail for Daenerys, that consisted in ravens, horses, several snakes hiding in every corner of her room and her personal guard that had over 1,000 men, we sailed to Liss, my 150 ships loaded with men ready to fight and die for me. Our estimated time of arrival was approximately 1 day. The commander of my fleet said we would arrive in a day or so, if we didn't encounter their navy on the way. And we would not. Why? Krakens. Their navy was a non-existent concern for me. After all, I had ordered my Krakens to start destroying their ships, eliminating their navy before we even arrived at Liss, rendering Liss's naval defenses useless. While seeing my men fight in the sea would be intriguing, I didn't want to risk Daenerys' ship being crushed or something, and I also wanted all my men alive and fully rested for the siege that was coming. Depending on how well defended the city was, it could take from weeks to months to bring them to their knees, but I didn't have the luxury of that. Liss would fall, and it would fall fast. Pateki Mallory Magister of Liss POV. I had received a message from Pentos that a self-proclaimed king and conqueror was coming our way. What a stupid little child. My sources had confirmed he was indeed sailing to Liss, and that would arrive, but like many others he would fail. His army would shatter, his power would vanish and his men would be sold as slaves in my market, and after that I would personally train his wife to be a whore worthy of working in one of my pleasure gardens. Kids have a taste for victory and suddenly feel invincible, I laughed, as one of my naked whores served me more wine. Our navy is highly accustomed to Sea of Liss, no matter how big his army is, it can't do anything if it doesn't land, one of my advisors agreed. I can't wait to see if it's true that pure Valyrian pussy tastes like fire, I laughed, but a loud sound startled me, followed by the screams of terror. What was going on outside my beach tower? Standing up my chair and walking as fast as I could to the window to see what was happening, I glanced outside my tower, and what I saw made me shiver. This shouldn't be happening. Not now. A kraken. What is a beast so rare doing here? We have no krakens close to Liss, they are never around this area. What could have possibly made this terrible scenario? That kraken would dwindle our ships, but not enough to destroy our navy. My lord loomed there. My advisor pointed to another direction. Another kraken, too, maybe we could handle. My lord. My advisor cried in panic, pointing to another direction, where the same thing was happening. More krakens, destroying our ships one by one, they were targeting them, our navy was done for. There was nothing we could do to stop such creatures. All I could do was watch in terror how these creatures destroyed my defenses as if they were helping the brat coming up. Destiny was not smiling upon me. Ned Stark POV. I was anxiously waiting for my wife's carriage as I saw it descend from the road. I would be soon reunited with her, and the rest of my family, my pack. It almost felt as if the war wasn't going on, and we were at peace. As I pondered over this stupid ideas, deep within my thoughts, the carriage stops, and like an arrow Cat gets out and comes running at my arms. Ned. Cat cried, touching my face as if she didn't believe it. I'm back, I smiled, not resisting the urge anymore to kiss her. It was as if I was dying of thirst and her embrace was my only salvation. Things like this were never my forte, but I was happy with the thought she knew that I loved her, and needed her. I never lost hope the gods would help you, Kat said between sobs. I never stopped praying for you. I smiled, hugging her tightly. We are together at last. Our embrace lasted for about 5 minutes before we broke it off. By this point Kat had calmed down and started to explain to me in detail how the war was going. She also went into detail to explain how Ronard planned to use me. I knew she didn't think much of the lad, but this is troubling. Kat, stop, I said. She was getting on my nerves. I loved her, but he had saved me. He deserved at least some respect. I would not let other badmouth someone that has only done good to our family. We owe him a lot, more than he owe us. Stop this nonsense. We are northerners. We don't dwell in plots like the southerners. We are for the most part honorable, and the lad for me is honorable. We were the ones that broke our word first and paid a grave price for it. Kat glared at me, as if I had insulted her, but it had to be said. If it wasn't for Robert and my lack of spine to stop him, we would have Ronard aiding us right now, and Sansa would have a good husband. We had severed that ourselves, and we are the only ones to blame. You'll see, like I told not to come to King's Landing because you would probably end up dead, and it ended up being almost true. You'll see how honorable that kid can be, Kat said with a huff, leaving to speak with her father. Not even an hour together and we already fought. I sighed. Chapter 58, Chapter 57. It was finally here. We had arrived at Liss with no complications, just as I expected. Now was where the war started. My men were prepared for what is to come. I had told them there were only 2 rules, no raping and no killing kids. Most of the last year has been spent increasing my military strength to prepare for the challenges ahead. This was my first challenge. My first conquest as the king of the 7 kingdoms, the king of Essos. At the coast, we found nothing but a desolate area that made unloading and setting the camp walk long and silent. The Magister probably opted to play on the defense without his navy. He didn't have many options after all, but so much silent could mean they were trying to ambush me. So with that in mind, I sent a few ravens to scout the area, and some to investigate what the Magister was doing right now. If they had a militia of 2,000 sellswords it would a lot, and against my army of 80,000 Dothraki, plus what I had from the 7 kingdoms, made his options very limited. He can't face me hadden, so trying to starve me out here the best option. Quite crafty considering he is nothing but a merchant, but I suppose I must give credit where it's due. It takes our men roughly 8 hours to set the camp, starting with my tent so that my wife could rest. The rest of the day was spent on unloading our supplies from the ships, weapons, food, medical equipment, and more, but it was fairly simple to do it without opposition. I originally expected to face some type of problem once we arrived at the tropical island, but I'm glad I was wrong with that. I can relax at the thought nothing will happen to Dany, not even by mistake. A few hours after setting the camp, my ravens flew back to their posts with updates, and things were mostly like I expected them to be. The Magister had indeed planned a defensive strategy, but not for the entirety of Liss. He had moved the entire company of sellswords he had hired to his castle and had locked himself there with some other nobles. With all the food he was able to move and raid from the people of Liss, his plan to stall me for as long as possible, while he contacted Bravus for help. Little did he know his ravens had betrayed him and no messages would arrive at Bravus, ever. Little did he know, he made this conquest massively easier. He had left out at their own risk all the citizens of Liss, from slaves to whore, to fend for themselves against my army. All I had to do was show a bit of generosity. After all, if you feed a stray dog, he's going to stay. Help someone in need and you will have their undying devotion. Is politics 101, seriously, who picks these guys to rule? But not only he had screwed up with his people practically handing them to me on a silver platter, but he had also made my hunt easier, because thanks to him, all my enemies in this island were now in one single place. A target begging to be burned. How delightful, I smirked, very happy with the information I had been given. But that wasn't all the information my ravens were able to gather for me. Apparently, the Magister originally pretended to slave my people, and make my wife a queen, his personal whore. With that insightful new information at hand, I let my men know the situation, sending as you would say political ambassadors around the island with each one a small army of 5,000 soldiers to back them up, with simple one mission, to tell all the citizens that would not harm, that our target was the Magister, and that if they bowed the knee, we would ensure that the Magister paid for his crimes against them. As for me, I had an entirely different mission, on a completely different tone. I was not in the mood for peace. Quite frankly, what I wanted right now was to boil the Magister alive for his hubris of thinking that he would ever touch Daenerys, for I would make sure he begged with all his might for the sweet and kind release of death, and only then I would deliver his wretched soul into the fiery pits of hell. So with anger boiling within my soul and the unyielding desire of butchering a Magister, I rode with my Khalasar to his castle, ready to bring him and every down, no mercy. My beliefs were simple. In war, if they stand behind me I would give them protection, as I do with my men. If they stand beside me, they would get my respect. But if they stand against me, they would get no mercy. May the gods have mercy upon our enemies, I shouted, getting cheers of approval from my Khalasar, because we won't. A villager? War. My Khalasar chanted as we rode to the castle, each and every single one of them, ready to taint their blades with blood. Pateki Mallory Magister of Liss POV. The brat had arrived. His army was, as my source in Pentos had said, massively big, with over 80,000 men, Dothrakis, and Westerosi men, but mostly Dothraki. There was no way I could confront him with my 3,000 sellswords. Our navy was our only defense. Without it, thanks to those Kraken, we were in a pretty bad situation, so I contacted Bravus. With their support this could be salvage, and we would destroy this threat. All I had to do is wait. And the lowly citizens of Liss would serve as sand for my watch. They would die for a bigger and better cause than themselves, to protect me, their Magister. Sir. One of my servants entered the room, sweating like a madman. Our scouts? They came back. The army is moving our way, they say at least over 60,000 soldiers. How did he know where was my castle? There were several dozens in Liss. This castle is even my primary castle, and more importantly, why wasn't he laying waste to the city or focusing on controlling the citizens first? It mattered not. His army might be big but is useless if he can reach within my walls. I have more than enough food to survive a year feeding everyone here, and more if I just let others starve. Have the archers ready, I ordered, should they try to approach too much. Back to Ronard POV. I had two plans for the siege this time around. After all, I was better prepared this time. Basically I would set huge scaling ladders against the castle's outer walls, for my soldiers to climb and gain access to the castle. However, this would leave my men vulnerable to arrows and other objects thrown at them from the battlements on the castle walls. That where my ravens come in. They would attack the archers and help my men to reach the walls. But this was just plan A. Plan B was that another part of my army would ram the doors of the castle. If we could break down the castle gate, we would have free access to the castle. So with the large wooden logs I had brought, I would set my men to pound against the gate and eventually until they destroyed the gate. I would set my men with both plans, and one way or the way, we would enter and lay waste on their men. Kill all the archers, I ordered my Raven squad, who immediately after left the formation. Flying to the castle was to carry out their assignment diligently. Hiss, Neltharion hissed excitedly like always he had refused to part ways with me. This would prove beneficial once he was fully grown. We'll be there soon, I patted his head, as I continued to gallop with my horse at full speed through the city of Liss, people cowering in fear, not even daring to move, and one can hardly blame them. Dothrakis were quite fearsome, and even more in massive numbers. Hiss, this time I felt anger within Neltharion as if like me, he wanted retribution with the Magister. Was he feeling my feelings? We will, don't worry, he will burn. I smiled with a dark undertone, as I pondered, could Neltharion breath fire already? Can you set him on fire? I knew asking this was maybe a tad complicated for a newborn, but they do grow up fast. In response, Neltharion blew a bit of fire, doing his maximum effort to keep it up, the fire being at much like 2 lighters. This development seemed to depress Neltharion who sulked under my jacket. Hey buddy, don't worry, you'll be soon burning like a massive flamethrower, besides with a bit of oil, that fire you have will work. Asterisk hiss? Asterisk Neltharion hissed, with hope, with an expression that said, really? Yes, you will set the man on fire. I chuckled, hey maybe we can make a dad and his dragon day out of this. Hiss, Chapter 59, Chapter 58. The siege started, with my men executing my plans to the letter, as I shouted, plunging my sword into the ground, do you know what's waiting beyond these walls? My men in response started to stomp the ground with their feet, our prey, our enemies. My army at this rose their blades crying out with one voice, cheering for victory, cheering for the battle that was to come. With a smile forming on my face, I put on my helmet, as I rushed to the walls, being the first to climb the ladders, my Khalasar following close by. Hundreds of arrows were about to whistle through the air, but my ravens entered the scene, bothering the heck out of the archers, killing some in the process by pushing them off the edge. With this opportunity opening up, I make a hand signal. Half of my men split off, part of them trying to climb and the other battering the castle wall, howling like wolves with a thirst for blood. It took me a few seconds to climb the ladders, but once I was on the edge of the wall, I sprinted towards the archers that were still alive, half of my men behind him. The archers in defense tried to let off a volley of arrows at us, hitting some of my men. Dodging the incoming arrows, I leaped over the fortifications they had to protect the archers, sword flashing before my feet ever touched the ground, landing behind them as the archers crumple to the ground as my sword cuts through them. It takes a moment for my men to catch up with and help me lay death into the archers. Within seconds we start to massacre them, erasing their primary defenses, rendering the walls completely useless against my horde of Dothraki climbing. With a smile, I turned around looking at the castle where the Magister was hiding, and with a nod, I confirm my next target. My men catch up to this almost unperceivable gesture and rally to the castle. As I dash for the castle, I hear the door being opened, and the rest of my army rushing in. They had no way of winning now, not that they ever did. It doesn't take me long before I reach the castle, the main event of this invasion. The archers at the castle unleash a fusillade of arrows, killing a few of my men as we advance. Every few yards another soldier would fall. Several of them are wounded, but if they were not dead they would keep moving forward, as they saw me, their king, charging into battle without fear. As for me, arrows won't stop me. I've been either cutting through them or using my shield to block them. By this point my shield is now quilled with them. As I advanced I see two archers showing their faces. With a smile forming on my face, I grabbed a spear that was dropped on the ground that belonged to one of my fallen comrades and with great force hurled at the archers, catching them just above the chest, tearing through their throats like a needle and plunging them against the wall like a decoration. The archers, seeing that their efforts were completely in vain and ineffective to slow us, throw down their bows and take up their spears and swords racked behind them. But unfortunately for them, I'm already upon them, cutting them down with ruthless precision. Every time my Valyrian sword flashes through the air another man falls, and I just kept sweeping through them like flies, my face painted with their tainted blood. After a second my men catch up and are fighting beside me now, and these sellswords are no match for the Dothraki in hand-to-hand combat. On the other side of the castle, my army is slaughtering the sellswords. As for me, I'm not even breathing hard after the slaughter. This was a piece of cake. I didn't even wake up Neltharion with all this, who was still sleeping on my jacket. With a smile I remove my helmet as I see my army eradicate the rest of the pitiful army they had to defend. With my Dothraki searching the grounds and rooms, dispatching any dying soldiers or men inside the castle. As I take a seat against the wall, one of my blood riders hurries over to my side. The castle is our, Michael. The Dothraki cheer at this, happy for my victory, their victory. Any updates about the Magister? I inquired. I had told them specifically that I wanted to be the one to kill him. There is one area left, that has over 500 men. My blood riders nodded, considering he wasn't able to escape the island. By any means, the bastard was there. Good, take me there. I smiled. As I walk to the last part of this castle to conquer, I gaze up at the sky, slowly turning my eyes to the captain of this sellsword company. They are 150 meters away, give it or so, still alive because my men knew better than to kill them without me here. With a smile, I point at the captain. Is your boss inside? As I shouted and inquired. Yes, but we are not going to defend him. This is out of our pay, the captain said, trying to weasel out of this one. We could work for you. So you will betray your current patron, for me. I chuckled as I grabbed a spear from one of my men. With my chuckle turning into a dark smile, I heft the spear up, as I calculated the distance and how much force I would need, and throw it at him. The captain barely has time to react to what was happening, but by the moment he realizes what is about to happen, is too late, as the spearhead had already found its mark, his chest, piercing him and 5 men to the ground. The captain clutches at the wooden shaft, not comprehending his fate, fear being the last emotion he experienced. The sellsword stared at his fallen captain and looked at me. Why would I want someone that will betray me for the better bidder? I said coldly, as I gave the signal to my men to slaughter them. Men like you don't deserve the honor to serve me. All you deserve is my blade. The Magister was not happy to see, but oh, how happy I was for this opportunity. I was as happy as any man about to kill someone threatening his family could. Hello there, I smiled, taking a seat, seeing the men tremble before me. I surrender, the Magister said, lowering his head. Oh, that's not how it works, my friend. I chuckled, patting him on the back. You lost any human rights the moment your mind sailed and decided to make my wife a whore, albeit impossible, as you saw today, the mere thought. Well, I have no words, you must now. The Magister was shaking uncontrollably by this point, peeing himself on fear as I soothed him. No, don't cry now, you will need those tears later, but for now, I want to know, who told you I was coming? I had received the raven, but it wasn't signed. I had a hunch it was Illyrio, but I could be wrong. A Magister, the Magister answered, not daring to look at me in the eyes. You have any idea how little those that narrow it down? I sighed. Ordello, a friend of Illyrio, the Magister said between rasped breaths. Good boy, I patted him, with a soft smile, making him look at me for a second, receiving immediately a punch that knocked down many of his teeth. Did I give you permission to look at me, worm? No, the Magister said, bleeding badly through his mouth. Exactly. Now, as for your sins, I hummed, remembering Neltharion wanted to chip in, which gave me an idea. You will die, but your gruesome death needs preparation. My idea was to replicate the Sicilian bull just for him, which was an ancient torture device used in Greece. This bull was a hollow brass statue crafted to resemble a real bull. The victims we replaced inside, with no escape. The door was shut tight, sealing them in. Fire them would then be lit around the bull. As the victim succumbed to the searing heat inside, he would thrash about and scream in agony. The movements and sounds would be muted by the bull's mass, and thanks to the design of the bull, the sounds inside would transform and sound outside like those of a real bull. I would commission the bull, and Neltharion would set the bull on fire with his cute fire, and that way my little dragon son would feel helpful. Make sure he doesn't kill himself, I ordered my Dothraki, as they dragged him to a cell. With Liss under control, I couldn't help but wonder what was Daenerys doing right now. Chapter 60, Chapter 59. The appropriation of the Liss was pretty calm, and without any problems. After all, the people of Liss already hated their Magister for what he did to them in these dire times, and were too afraid or grateful to complain. But I knew soon most of Essos would love me, because I would change the political play, starting with Liss. For starters, having slaves would be illegal, and punishable by death, if the slaves in question wanted to stay with their masters, for any reason, be it Stockholm Syndrome or because their masters were actually decent persons, they would be allowed to, as long as it was clear they could leave their post at any given time. Raiding would be non-existent, and the Dothraki would be the army of Essos to stop anyone trying to rise in the profession they had left behind, because of me. The Dothraki, in turn, would get paid like the army does, with their salaries, or in this case, food and items they require, coming from the exuberant taxes Essos had. Seriously, no wonder every Magister is extremely rich. The taxes are 3 times what Westerosi people pay. I, of course, would try to lower the taxes, if possible, but for now was but a nice thought. To have a general idea of how much I could reduce them, I needed to have every city under my control. With Liss alone my estimate would be really inaccurate, and perhaps implausible. Michael, my blood rider said, entering the room I was occupying, the old office of the Magister. I was here reading documents and other papers to understand the socio-political state of this city a bit better. Yes, I said, acknowledging him. The Khaleesi is safe and sound, inside the castle as you requested, my blood rider informed proudly. Very good, let her know I'll be with here in a minute, I smiled, as I went back to read all documents the soon-to-be roasted men had. As you command, blood of my blood rider left, to complete his task, diligently, may I add. Blood of my blood, I chuckled, wondering, would I ever get used to this? Daenerys POV. The siege lasted a bit more than a day, outnumbers and strategy proving to be vastly superior to Liss defenses. Ronard had not only won in a timely manner but had done it without killing almost any civilians, getting a massive approval from the citizens that originally feared the Dothraki horse would lay waste to their tropical land. Now, our tropical island, Ronard, has promised he would give me a safe place to have our kids and recover, and like everything so far, he has delivered every promise. Liss was officially our first conquest together, the place where my kids would be born. My Khaleesi, one of Ronard's blood riders said entering my chambers, our great Khal will be with you shortly. That sounded like Ronard, always working, worthy of being king. My king, very well, thanks. With that, I was left alone, with my 2 small baby dragons, and my personal squad of ravens. Ned Stark POV. After a few days of travel, I had finally arrived at the garrison my son had set close to the borders of the Riverlands. It was relatively close, with only being 5 days of travel to get there from the castle of House Tully. Once I arrived, I couldn't help but find that it was surprising to see that all the houses of the north, my land, had raised their banners to help my son set this injustice I had suffered, right. For the exception of House Mormont, they had refused to come, not that I blamed them for it. Many did, that was at least what Kat said. Father. Rob cried out the moment I stood out the car, hugging tightly, with love, but something about him was different. This war had changed him. You have done good, I'm proud of you. I smiled genuinely. My son had held a war without succumbing to the pressures of one. I have only done what you would have done, Rob smiled, as he turned to Kat that had just recently gotten out of the carriage. Mother. Rob approached her, hugging her in the same lovely embrace he gave me as he asked, how is grandfather? Good, Kat answered drily, as she started to walk away to what I assumed was our tent. I need to rest for the moment, my head hurts. Rob sighed as he gave me a look. Does it has to do with Ronard? I sighed back. It does. I don't agree with her ideas about what is going on with Ronard. I believed her at first. Rob smiled sadly, seeing his mother fade into the background. But he saved you. He brought you back to the north where you belong, and until he proves otherwise, he is someone I would like to call a friend. I smiled at my son, but the matters were a bit more delicate than that. Ronard wanted the throne, and so did everyone but ours, so that only left me with 2 options. Either I waged war against Ronard, who was part of us, part of our kin, a true northerner like almost everyone at this garrison, or I helped him. Enemies or allies, there wasn't a middle ground, and I had to make that choice. I know. I smiled. Sansa Stark POV. Father was safe and sound. At first, I thought it was a cruel joke from Joffrey. That little monster would surely enjoy seeing me get hopes just to crush them under his heel. But, after getting a few more ravens, I had no other choice but to believe it. Father was alive, and the responsible for it was Ronard. He had saved father when he didn't have to. It's been a while since I last saw him, but I have some much to thank him. He might not have ended marrying me, but he had kept his promises. He had kept me safe, even from afar. Something mother didn't see at all. She hated him, for reasons I had yet to find. She was so unfair with him that made me question everything I had seen from her. Was this the same treatment John received? Was John like Ronard, mistreated and misjudged by her delusional mind? After all, that was the only description I could come up with. Ronard had done nothing but help us, and yet she hates him. Perhaps I should write John a letter, apologizing for how I treated him, because apparently I had just opened my eyes to the truth. How naive I was. Form your own opinions, Sansa. Don't let others decide what you think. You are a wolf, Sansa, not a sheep. And only the sheep follow others blindly. You were right all along. Arya Stark POV. I knew it. Ronard would never hurt us. He was our friend. I'm never wrong with the people I like, and he was on my list of people I considered great. He had saved father, just because he could. He had kept our family, our pack of wolves together. Mother was like always in the wrong about him, like she has always been about John, and what ladies should do and not do. One day I would pay him all he had done for us. Maybe I could be one of his knights. He did say I had talent. One day I would be his Fang, the Fang of the West Arrows. I like that name. I laughed as I continued to practice with my sword. Cersei POV. Lord Stark had escaped my grasp and had joined his family and their army, whose plan was to overthrow their rightful king Joffrey if that wolf allied himself with Stannis, and they somehow managed to convince Renly to join them. Our heads would be on the ropes by next morning. This, of course, was totally implausible, for Renly and Stannis hated each other and would never bend the knee, and as for Lord Stark, he was in debt with Ronard for saving him. How did Ronard's influence manage to get so far as to have people inside our ranks eluded me? But was a clear statement I had misjudged the little lord. He certainly played the game better than I had anticipated, better than most. After all, by saving Lord Stark he had most likely won an ally, and had, in turn, weakened us. Father had the little bear in high regard, saying that out of all the enemies we were facing, Ronard would prove to be the most dangerous and unpredictable. But like always, we would come on top. We were lions, and lions won. Even Tyrion, that little monster, had given his pitiful existence some value after he sealed an alliance with Euron Greyjoy, gaining his fleet to our side. Sister, we need to talk, Tyrion said, entering my room, already ruining my day. What do you want? Make it quick, I inquired. We need to talk about Myrcella and possible alliances, Tyrion said, getting a cup of wine. He wanted to sell my daughter like a whore, as father had done with me? How could he even consider that my children belonged with me, and with me, they would all stay? I will not sell Myrcella like a cheap whore. I hissed at him, wanting to strangle his little neck and see his life slowly fade away. Father has already agreed on it. I was just being polite, but we need the Martells in our side. We have no allies, Tyrion sighed, shocking me what he had said. Father had agreed to this? After everything our house had done to theirs, Myrcella would die there. They would kill her there, I growled. Dorne is known for two things, no boundaries when it comes to sex, and that they don't harm children, Tyrion said. I will take this discussion with father. He can't decide these things without me, I said before storming out of the room, looking for father.